Chapter 284. The Birth of Luogwa. Guang Bodhi enters the realm. The merging process of the three fires of life was mysterious beyond words. It was not a simple process of making up for the deficiency. Instead, it was based on the invisible and intangible rules of the great way that controlled everything. Yin and yang blended, the size of the fire of life complemented each other, constantly strengthening the smallest fire of life. In the end, that tiny fire of life grew strong enough to break free from the endless restraints. After an unknown period of time. It seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like thousands of years had passed. Suddenly, an invisible, but incomparably loud, earth-shattering sound exploded in the depths of Guang Pu and Luo Fu's souls. Following this sound, Guang Pu and Luo Fu regained their senses. What their eyes saw and what their ears heard, they regained the scene inside the restricted space. It was no longer the perspective of the fire of life. And at the moment when their body regained its senses, Luo Fu only felt that he had consumed more than half of his blood essence, but his cultivation realm was not much affected. This was completely different from what Guang Pu had said before, that his cultivation realm would be greatly reduced. This greatly shocked Luo Fu. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Guang Pu. With this look, he could not help but feel a great pain in his heart. He saw that Guang Pu's face was as white as paper. There was an incomparably powerful aura surging out from her body. The entire space inside the cave seemed to be violently distorted under this aura. A strange sound rang out from inside Guang Pu, shaking Luo Fu's eardrums and shaking his originally calm heart. Seeing this, how could Luo Fu not understand what was going on? This was obviously because his cultivation realm had been greatly damaged, and his mind could no longer control the power in his body. Understanding this, Luo Fu also knew why his consumption was less than expected. Junior sister, why are you so stupid? Why aren't you willing to let me share the burden with you? Why do you want to shoulder the losses yourself? Luo Fu was horrified. His body flashed to Guang Pu's side and supported Guang Pu's falling body. Senior brother, because of my stubbornness, you have already consumed a lot of your cultivation. How can I let you consume your cultivation for me? Guang Pu smiled weakly. Luo Fu was touched and heartbroken, but he could only hug Guang Pu, unable to say another word. Just then, a series of crackling sounds came from below. Hearing this sound, Guang Pu instantly came to life. She suppressed her emotions and looked down. When he looked down, he saw a miraculous scene below him. Seeing the change in Guang Pu's expression, Luo Fu was curious and quickly looked down. He saw that the strange fruit below had undergone a tremendous change. The strange fruit had become like a miniature galaxy, with countless densely packed light spots forming a spiral shape. It slowly rotated around a certain part of the void, and a tremendous force was slowly released in the process. The lightning that had filled the entire space had completely disappeared. In the center of the spiral galaxy there was a misty green ball of light. It was not very bright, but it was very conspicuous and exceptionally mysterious. It was slowly rotating. Rays of light were emitted from the ball of light. These rays of light extended to every spot of light in the spiral galaxy, directly connecting all the spots of light together, forming a mysterious and boundless balance system. Looking at the spiral galaxy, Luo Fu suddenly had a very familiar feeling. This kind of feeling usually only appeared when he listened to Luo Fan's sermons. But at this moment, looking at the spiral galaxy, he actually had a feeling that he was facing the Great Tao. The invisible and intangible Great Tao that controlled everything yet evaded everything revealed its true appearance in front of him. Following the appearance of this feeling, his blood essence, which had originally been consumed to an extreme degree, quickly recovered. The energy within his body, which had been exhausted, was rapidly growing and recovering as he comprehended this feeling. After a short while, he realized that he had recovered to his peak state. Even his cultivation level had slightly increased due to this feeling. He was now in the spirit reversion state. His body and soul were both transforming into the most perfect innate body and innate soul. This slight improvement in cultivation level had slightly improved his body and soul, and even his innate nature had slightly improved. The spiral galaxy below him rotated faster and faster, and its distribution became wider and wider. Just as Luo Fu's body had reached its peak and his cultivation level had increased, the spiral galaxy's rotation speed had already linked up to form a huge light spiral. At this speed, although it was still evolving the Great Tao, it had already surpassed the scope of what Luo Fu could comprehend. Looking at the spiral galaxy that had become a light spiral, Luo Fu felt dizzy. Knowing that he would not be able to comprehend anything else, and that if he continued to look, it would be detrimental to his cultivation, he hurriedly suppressed his emotions and turned his gaze towards Guang Pu, who was beside him. Guang Pu wasn't as lucky as Luo Fu. The spiral galaxy was formed by the strange fruit's power, and it naturally contained the secrets of the 36 restrictions. Currently, it had split into countless specks of light that rapidly revolved around a certain center, displaying the mysteries of the 36 restrictions. From Luo Fu's point of view, this was extremely profound and indescribable. It was as if the veil of the Great Tao had been lifted in front of him. However, from Guang Pu's point of view, it was nothing much. These were all things that she had comprehended before, and even developed from the mysteries of her own body. In other words, looking at this scene, other than satisfaction, she didn't gain anything else. Her face was still pale. Although the power in her body was a little more stable than before, it was only because her mind had become more stable, and nothing else. Luo Fu held on to Guang Pu, his face filled with heartache. The light spiral spun faster and faster, and in the end it turned into a huge light disk. Its size was also slowly shrinking during this process. This process lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. After 9 days and 9 nights, the light disk had shrunk to the size of a person. The light was so intense that it was blinding. Under this green light, it was as if a sun had appeared in the huge space. Ah! A young voice filled with surprise came from the ball of light. Following this voice, Guang Pu's expression became extremely surprised. At the same time, the dazzling azure light abruptly receded, revealing an extremely adorable 3-year-old baby girl in a tutu. She was chubby and adorable, and was wearing a tutu. The baby giggled and said intermittently, "Daddy? Mommy." Hearing this voice, Guang Pu instantly burst into tears. "Good child, good child." She raised her hand, and the baby came into her arms. She hugged it tightly. Seeing such a cute child, Luo Fu also showed a kind smile. No matter what, he was at the reversion realm. Although he was not as good as Guang Pu, his knowledge was not much less than Guang Pu's. Just from looking at it, he realized that the tutu the baby was wearing was a magical and mysterious semi-magic treasure. Its 36 restrictions had been perfected and were even showing signs of merging into one. It was just short of evolving into a spirit. However, this semi-magic treasure had an extremely close connection with the baby. This connection could allow the baby to replace the spirit at any time, turning the semi-magic treasure into a magic treasure. It could increase its power by 100 times. I didn't expect this to happen. Luo Fan, who was at the top of Buzhou Mountain, looked down and sighed. Although he was disappointed with Guang Pu's choice, it was not incomprehensible. As a parent, who could bear to see their child suffer? Forget it. Since things have come to this, it's not good to be too harsh on them. Luo Fan sighed. Then, he raised his hand and pointed. A spiritual light rushed out of his hand. In a flash, it had already crossed nearly 100,000 miles and rushed into the space-time illusion. It passed through the restrictions that Guang Pu had set up and spread out in front of Guang Pu and Luo Fu, wrapping around the baby girl. As the spiritual light wrapped around the baby girl, The baby girl's body was gradually dyed with the spiritual light. The power that was involuntarily emitted was gradually retracted. The power of the dudu that the baby girl was wearing was also restrained. It gradually became like an ordinary piece of cloth, and it didn't look mysterious at all. It was very clear that the spiritual light that Luo Fan emitted had completely covered the mysterious light of the baby and the semi-magic treasure, so that the power of the baby girl and the semi-magic treasure wouldn't be too dazzling. This didn't have a very big effect on the baby girl. At most, it could only be said to be the icing on the cake. However, it represented Luo Fan's acknowledgement of the baby girl. This was very meaningful to both Guang Pu and Luo Fu. When Guang Pu and Luo Fu saw the spiritual light, they immediately knew where it came from. They took a step forward and knelt on the ground, saying, "Thank you, Master, Dad, for the blessing. This girl is a half-connate life form. Her accumulation is too deep, and her future growth will be very slow. Fu can take care of her alone. Pu you need to come to the spirit space to recover your cultivation. Otherwise, if your Dao fruit collapses, it will be difficult to reunite." A faint voice entered Guang Pu and Luo Fu's ears. That was Luo Fan using his control of the space-time illusion to transmit his voice into the cave. Guang Pu naturally didn't want to leave her daughter like this, but Luo Fan's words were wise. At this moment, she already felt that her earthly immortal Dao fruit was shaking and could collapse at any time. This kind of collapse was different from when she turned the earthly immortal Dao fruit into magic power. Instead, it started from the level of magic power, and each magic power unit began to completely collapse. If the earthly immortal Dao fruit really collapsed like this, then her cultivation realm would suddenly drop a level, from the original itinerant immortal realm to the crossing disaster realm. At that time, she might not be able to break through again for tens of thousands of Yuanhui. Disciple obeys. Guang Pu finally bowed and said. Although Luo Fu didn't want Guang Pu to leave just like this, he also knew the importance of the matter. If Guang Pu didn't go into seclusion to recover her cultivation realm, her future would be hindered, and the time they could spend together would be reduced by hundreds or thousands of times. Therefore, he didn't stop Guang Pu, but just looked at her from the side with some reluctance. When Guang Pu obeyed and was about to leave with Luo Fan, Luo Fu finally saw the opportunity and said, "Father, please bestow a name for your granddaughter. This girl was born from the blood of the two of you. Let's call her Luogua." Luo Fan's voice didn't have the slightest hesitation and said directly, "Luogua, Luogua. Thank you, Master, for bestowing a name." When Guang Pu heard this, she thought for a moment, then happily kowtowed and thanked him. As she kowtowed, there seemed to be a mysterious thing that was added to the baby girl's body, causing the baby girl to have some kind of mysterious and wonderful change. It was as if countless opportunities were added to her body. Although Guang Pu's cultivation realm had greatly decreased, she could still faintly feel this change. She immediately knew that this name was not simple, and it was in line with the great Tao. She couldn't help but feel even more grateful, and tears were about to fall again. "In 3 days, come to the top of Buzhou Mountain. I will take you into the spirit space." Luo Fan's voice came slowly. After this sentence, the space was silent. "Thank you, Master." Guang Pu sighed in admiration. She estimated that if this continued, her earth immortal fruit of Tao would collapse in 3 days at most. In other words, she could at most spend 3 days with his child. If it exceeded 3 days, the consequences were not something she could bear. There was no need to talk about the happiness of their family after that. Though Luogua only had the appearance of a 3-year-old child, her spiritual consciousness was already very complete. She couldn't understand complicated things, but she could understand simple things. For example, Guang Pu was the mother, Luo Fu was the father, and Guang Pu was about to leave. Therefore, during these 3 days, Guang Pu and Luo Fu were extremely happy. They also felt extremely fast. After 3 days, no matter how unwilling Guang Pu was, she had to bid farewell to Luo Fu. Turning into a ray of light, she pierced through the time and space illusion and rushed up the mountain of Buzhou Mountain. Her speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she arrived at the top of Buzhou Mountain, in the middle of the liquefied ocean of chaotic qi. There was an infinite amount of pressure above the ocean of chaotic qi. Under this pressure, Guangpu's already unstable earthly immortal Tao fruit, which was on the verge of collapse, almost couldn't withstand the pressure and almost completely collapsed. Luckily, just then, she saw Luo Fan. At this time, Guangpu's entire body was wrapped in a layer of silver lunar essence. Like a belt of light, it resonated with the surrounding primal chaos energy, creating all kinds of unimaginable sound and light effect. It made her look like a goddess, but this was not a good thing, because this meant the qi inside her was already leaking out and was surging everywhere. This meant her earth immortal fruit of Tao was about to collapse. Luo Fan was currently floating above the ocean of chaotic qi in a lotus position. Seeing Guangpu's arrival, he frowned. Frowning, Zhang Xian raised his hand. An invisible force acted on Guangpu's body. As this force acted, Guangpu felt her crazily turbulent earth immortal fruit of Tao, which was on the verge of collapse, suddenly stop. Once it stabilized, the feeling of collapse disappeared completely. At the same time, the silver moonlight around her also completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared in the first place. This unworthy disciple greets master. Guangpu knelt down in fear and trepidation. Luo Fan sighed. This is my fault. It's not your fault. You may rise. No, master's plan is divine. Your method is perfect. It is your disciple's unworthiness that caused master's painstaking efforts to be in vain. Your disciple. Guangpu's face was full of shame. Luo Fan raised his hand and Guangpu was lifted up by a huge force. She stood up straight and could no longer kneel. I have already come to a conclusion on this matter. There is no need to say more. The time flow of my spirit space is 730 times faster than that of the primordial world, and 73 times faster than that of the space-time illusion. According to Guo-Er's growth speed, after you live in the spirit space for a period of time, it will be equivalent to her growing up by 1 year. You just need to focus on cultivation. You don't have to worry about missing Guo-Er's growth process, Luo Fan said lightly. Guangpu felt the tremendous force on his body, and knew that if he continued to entangle himself in that matter, it would only make Luo Fan impatient. He didn't dare to say anything more, and only dared to bow. When she heard Luo Fan's explanation, the faint worry in her heart finally disappeared completely. She said, I know. Luo Fan nodded and raised his hands to tear the void. There was a soft rustling sound. Although the sound was faint, Guangpu seemed to understand something. It seemed that her earthly immortal's Tao fruit was faintly touched, making her understand some of the mysteries of time and space that she could not understand before. After the sound, a 30-feet-high door appeared in front of Guangpu. Through the door, there was a boundless world. There was an infinite starry sky, an incomparably vast land, mountains, rivers, flowers, trees, insects, fish, birds, and beasts. It was a complete and vast world. Is this the Master's spirit space? It turns out that the gap between me and the Master is so huge. This was the only thought that appeared in Guangpu's mind. Come with me, Luo Fan said lightly. With that, he stepped into the door first. Guangpu was awakened by Luo Fan's words and hurriedly followed Luo Fan into the door. The moment she stepped into the door, a slight dizziness appeared in her mind. This dizziness was not because of anything else, but because her senses were sharp and her cultivation level was high. She felt the change in time and space, and her spirit was not used to it. After the dizziness, she came to a whole new time and space, a whole new world. She took a deep breath, causing surging and strange vital energy to charge into her body, and then it circulated through an extremely profound path before transforming into strands of imperceptible pure energy that surged into the earthly immortal Tao fruit, causing her earthly immortal Tao fruit to feel slightly cool and feel rather comfortable. This world is helping me to stabilize my cultivation level. Seeing this process, Guang Pu's heart was filled with endless gratitude. The energy of this world was a little weaker than the chaotic energy. As for her earthly immortal Tao fruit that was about to collapse, it wouldn't have any improvement no matter how much qi of primordial chaos absorbed. At this time, she had only absorbed this little bit of qi of primordial chaos, yet she had such progress. This was naturally the special effect of this world. It was this world that was helping her on its own. Chapter 285. The True Power of Pangu. Luo Fan raised his hand and slightly waved. Within a short moment of teleportation, Guang Pu's body had already disappeared from the void of the universe. She came to a secret chamber that Luo Fan specially created for Guang Pu. This secret chamber was very strange. It had a close connection with every inch of space in this small world. Just like in the void of the universe, endless star power condensed into billions of tiny light spots, filling this space. You can cultivate yourself in here. This place is connected to the starry sky. If you calm your mind and meditate, you will definitely learn endless secrets from it, and your cultivation will recover as fast as possible. If everything goes well, you may be able to recover your cultivation within a period of time," said Luo Fan blandly. When Guang Pu came to this secret room that seemed like the void of the universe, she felt her body and mind relaxed. It was as if there were endless mysteries of the great Tao evolving in front of her, showing her the mysteries of the world and advancing her cultivation realm. In his heart, he knew that this was a secret room specially designed by his master. His heart was filled with gratitude and shame. He could only bow and say, "Thank you, Master. If this disciple fails to live up to Master's expectations again, I will never have the face to see Master again." Luo Fan nodded faintly and no longer spoke. He turned around and took a step forward, disappearing from the secret room that was shaped like the void of the universe. At the moment, he still had many things to do, especially the most important thing, Pangu's spirit blood. He didn't have much time to waste on Guang Pu and the others. Luo Fan's figure flickered, and he immediately left the minor dimension. He arrived at the temple-shaped dimensional space and sat down cross-legged in the void. Lin Ming spread out his mind and fused with this small dimensional realm. He carefully sensed the surging of space and time within this dimensional realm, feeling the differences between this dimensional realm and a minor dimension. Pangu was able to create such a vast prehistorical world. Needless to say, he was a powerful being. Just the power contained in his blood essence was enough for Luo Fan to treat him seriously. For example, the world evolved from this drop of Pangu spirit blood was a world dominated by science and technology, and the details of that world were very similar to the Earth in Luo Fan's previous life. The nature of Pangu's essence blood had been improved to a level that almost surpassed everything. Therefore, Luo Fan had to treat it seriously. After sitting in this dimensional realm for 3 days and 3 nights, Luo Fan felt that his mind had returned to an incomparably tranquil state of enlightenment. He knew that the time to deal with Pangu's blood essence had come. He raised his left hand, and that enormous drop of Pangu's spirit blood appeared before him. This drop of Pangu's spirit blood had already been processed by Luo Fan. At this time, it was a drop of blood jade that was wrapped in a 3-dimensional talisman made of 129,600 spacetime traces. This drop of liquid floated in front of Luo Fan, slowly rotating and releasing an incomparably strong and astonishing power. The billowing impact of this aura caused space and time within this dimensional realm to faintly distort, as if it couldn't withstand the impact of this aura. Luo Fan's expression remained unchanged, as if he didn't think it was strange. Pangu's spirit blood contained an almost inexhaustible power, and had also merged with the power of the entire world. Therefore, even if the power of this drop of blood was more exaggerated, Luo Fan could still accept it, not to mention that it was just a slight fluctuation right now. Ji Hao raised his right hand and covered the void. Immediately, the dimensional realm changed automatically, and an inexplicable fluctuation was generated, instantly eliminating the influence caused by the power of Pan Gu spirit blood. With a thought in his mind, golden and silver light sparkled in his eyes. The dazzling light looked like two enormous suns emerging in this dimensional realm. After the appearance of the golden and silver light, Luo Fan instantly had the vision to see through everything. He fixed his eyes on this drop of Pan Gu spirit blood. Instantly, he saw through the three-dimensional talisman made of space-time traces around this drop of blood, and saw the true form of this drop of blood. This drop of blood was enormous. After seeing through the three-dimensional talisman made of space-time traces, Luo Fan felt like he was looking at a boundless blood sea. In this blood sea, an inexhaustible power was surging. Under the effect of all kinds of mysterious power, countless drops of blood condensed and transformed into billions of different kinds of creatures, living and dying in this blood sea, struggling to survive like ordinary creatures. This was the first time for Luo Fan to see these creatures, but somehow, he felt that they looked familiar. They seemed to have appeared in his dreams countless times. Thinking for a while, Luo Fan understood. These creatures were the shadows of the creatures that once existed in the world contained in Pan Gu spirit blood. They seemed to be vivid, as if they were truly living in the blood, but in fact they were merely illusions. These endless shadows flashed across in front of Luo Fan's eyes, constantly changing, and nearly infinite in number. These shadows seemed to be endless. Some of them were meaningless, just the remnants of the past world, while some contained the deepest secrets of Pan Gu spirit blood, including the traces of the great Tao that Luo Fan wanted to know. Luo Fan needed to carefully analyze all these. Ji Hao merely glanced through this drop of spirit blood, and before he had the time to analyze it, a month had passed. A month later, Luo Fan drew his spirit power out of this drop of spirit blood, then shook his body and tore the space of this medium-class world apart, entering this small world. Even though it was only a single drop of Pangu's blood essence, the profundities contained within it were too numerous, and it would take an unimaginably long amount of time for him to distinguish and comprehend them one by one. The chaos that he had to face was only 20 or 30,000 years later. If he spent all this time on comprehending the secrets of Pan Gu spirit blood, it would be too wasteful. Therefore, he decided to come to this small world and use the super-fast time flow in this small world to prolong the time for him to comprehend the secrets of Pan Gu spirit blood. After arriving at the minor thousand world, Luo Fan appeared in the depths of the entire starry sky, in a place where the endless stars couldn't shine. There were no stars within hundreds of millions of miles around this place, only faintly visible starlight spots shining in the distance. This place was close to the end of the small world. Although a small world was boundless, it had a certain limit after all. This limit was not the size of the space, but the stability of the space, as well as the capacity of materials and forces. When the capacity of materials and forces was weakened to a certain limit, it would be the limit of this small world. This was the case here. Coming to this place, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed at the drop of Pan Gu spirit blood. As the time twisted, a visible space ripple emerged on the surface of this drop of spirit blood. As the ripple emerged, the three-dimensional spell symbol condensed from 129,600 space-time traces on the surface of the drop of spirit blood collapsed instantly. The space-time mark was originally an invisible thing created by the space-time blade. Without the mysterious function of the three-dimensional talisman to restrict it, it collapsed instantly. In the blink of an eye, it was swallowed by the space-time of this mini-kiliacosm and disappeared without a trace. As the space-time traces disappeared, The 30 meters wide drop of Pan-Gu spirit blood instantly expanded by tens of thousands of times, surging in all directions. It looked as if a vast sea of blood had suddenly appeared in the void. This blood sea was enormous. Even on the continent hundreds of millions of miles away, one could faintly see the endless blood-red light emitted by this drop of spirit blood. Luo Fan floated above this drop of spirit blood. He looked down at the sea of blood and the countless living beings moving about. He took a step forward and rushed into the sea of blood. In a trance, he seemed to have entered a boundless blood-red world. This world was grotesque, with countless lights and shadows twisting and changing, as if he was having an extremely bizarre dream. But what was different from a dream was that this bizarre and dazzling scene contained some kind of truth of the world, some kind of mystery of the great Tao, some kind of mystery that could make Luo Fan suddenly realize the truth of the world. Almost no one could compare with Luo Fan's heart of Tao. Amidst these endless and bizarre lights and shadows, his mind and will did not move at all. He was not affected by these lights and shadows at all. His mind was calm, and he carefully distinguished which of these strange lights and shadows he was paying attention to. Which of these lights and shadows contained the mysteries of the great Tao, and which of them were formed from the afterimages of the living beings in the previous world. Time flew fast. In the blink of an eye, a yuan hui had passed. Even for the primordial world, such a long period of time was nearly 200 years. During such a long period of time, Luo Fan stayed in this blood ocean, which was transformed from Pan-Gu spirit blood. He sensed the endless lights and shadows released from the spirit blood, and carefully sensed the mysteries contained in it. After such a long period of time, Luo Fan had gained a lot. His cultivation level had been greatly improved, and he had also understood many secrets of the chaos world. He felt that he could achieve the same power as before with less consumption. However, he could not find the reason why the world inside Pan-Gu's spirit blood was a world of science and technology. On this day, Luo Fan told Ji how about every single light, shadow, and scene inside this Pan-Gu spirit blood. He could not find any clues, so he turned around and left the blood sea. Leisurely floating above the blood sea, he looked down at the grotesque scene below. In this drop of Pan-Gu's spirit blood, Luo Fan comprehended 36 exquisite techniques. These 36 scriptures formed a system of cultivation based on the Pangu true form. If Luo Fan taught these 36 techniques, he would definitely be able to create a cultivation system similar to the Tao sect in the future. It might even be more systematic, more exquisite, and more direct to the great Tao than the Tao sect's cultivation system. The great Tao that Luo Fan cultivated was exquisite and led to transcendence. However, when he saw such a cultivation system of Pan-Gu's true body, he could not help but be tempted. If it were not for the fact that his Taoist heart was firm and unchangeable, he might have the intention to change his cultivation direction. After adding these 36 techniques into the Tao Fruits Great Way scripture, the Tao Fruits Great Way scripture increased in breadth and depth. Even the blood reincarnation technique that seemed right, yet was actually wrong, had become even more perfect and unfathomable. The method of rebirth from a drop of blood was not just a life-saving method, nor was it a magical power that could only be used after being injured. Instead, it was an extremely powerful method of attaining the great Tao. After cultivating this technique, one would be able to undergo countless transformations and change one's innate aptitude. In other words, if a postnatal living being cultivated this method, he could obtain the body of an innate god through subtle adjustments to his body. He would have a potential that was more than 10 million times stronger than before. It could be said that Luo Fan had perfected the method of rebirth through a drop of blood after comprehending the cultivation system of Pangu real body. It was not inferior to those methods of returning to the past that he had created. With a slight movement of his mind, the 36 exquisite cultivation techniques of Pangu real body flowed through Luo Fan's mind. There were tens of millions of characters in the 36 Buddhist scriptures, and there were close to 100,000 images. With so many words and images, it only took Luo Fan a moment to completely analyze them. After analyzing the 36 techniques, Luo Fan carefully comprehended them, and 3 techniques were reconstructed. Each of these 3 techniques was at least 10 times shorter than any of the previous 36 techniques, and each of them only had about 10,000 characters at most. There were only a few dozen patterns on the wall. But the subtlety and mystery of each technique was a step further than that of the 36 technique. Yuanshi Tianzuan's Jade Pure Technique, Dao Tianzuan's Taiqing Mystic Technique, and Lingbao Tianzuan's Shangqing Mystic Technique. These were the names of these 3 techniques. The peak state of these 3 techniques was to cultivate a perfect immortal body. It was a state that was comparable to attaining the primordial unity Dao fruit. Even Luo Fan could not understand it at this moment. Each of the 3 techniques had their own unique characteristics, and the undying body that was cultivated from each technique had its own divine ability. The power of each technique was unimaginable. Among them, after the Yuanshi Tianzuan's Jade Pure Technique was cultivated, it could produce billions of golden lotuses. Each golden lotus was a small kiliacosm. When these billions of golden lotuses were gathered, it would have the power of billions of worlds. After the Dao Tianzuan's Taiqing Mystic Technique was cultivated, it could produce billions of incarnations. Each incarnation had the same power as the original body, and each incarnation was a self. As long as one of them was not destroyed, it would never die. This was called one turning into 3 pure ones, whose power was not inferior to the power of billions of worlds of the Yuanshi Tianzuan's Jade Pure Technique. After the Lingbao Tianzuan's Shangqing Mystic Technique was cultivated, it could not produce golden lotuses, nor could it produce billions of incarnations, but it could produce billions of halos around the body. These halos were special in nature. Each halo could condense into a treasure spirit, and its power was equal to the original body. Furthermore, these magic treasures were not illusions and could exist independently of him. Furthermore, after each magic treasure condensed from a circle of light was destroyed, the circle of light would change on its own and condense a similar circle of light again, replenishing the lost magic treasure. Moreover, the speed of condensation was very fast, and it would be regenerated almost at the moment of destruction. After being reorganized by Luo Fan, each of these 3 techniques was not inferior to the Tao fruit Great Way that Luo Fan cultivated. As long as anyone could cultivate any one of these techniques, he would obtain the power of immortality. In the future, no matter how big the tribulation was, as long as it did not affect the untainted land and hurt the foundation of the untainted land, he would be able to survive. Looking at these 3 techniques carefully, Luo Fan could not help but praise them. Although these 3 techniques were created by him, it was mostly because of the surging mystery of the Great Way contained in Pangu's essence blood. It could be said that Pangu's essence blood passed down these 3 techniques through his hands. He did not know all the mysteries, so he naturally would not regard the appearance of these 3 techniques as his own achievements. Savoring these 3 techniques carefully, Luo Fan praised them in his heart. He incorporated them into the body-strengthening volume of his Tao Fruit Great Way scripture, making the body-strengthening volume far surpass the other 1,295 volumes of the entire scripture. Thinking about what he had comprehended before, he slightly moved his mind. His body instantly changed and suddenly expanded thousands of times. He turned into a strong man with an indomitable spirit. His body emitted a vast and unyielding aura, and a powerful and mysterious aura spread out from his body, spreading to the entire spirit kiliacosm. In an instant it spread to the entire spirit kiliacosm. Affected by such an aura and momentum, the stars, continents, and primordial chi of the entire spirit kiliacosm changed more and more. It seemed that all the stars were about to gather towards him, and all the primordial chi was slowly rotating towards him. Luo Fan raised his hand. With a grasp, from hundreds of millions of miles away, a star that was coming towards him suddenly shook like a stone that had been grabbed by someone. With a flash, it was already in his hand. Slightly grasping and squeezing, this star was compressed quickly, and within a blink of an eye, it turned into a transparent blue crystal. Countless starlight sparkled in the crystal, as if a complete world existed in it. It also seemed that all kinds of unimaginable, immeasurable changes were happening in it. This strong man looked exactly like Pangu. Indeed, Luo Fan had comprehended the true magic of rebirth from a single drop of blood. With a single thought of his, he transformed the Pangu body that he had comprehended from Pangu's spirit blood. After transforming into this shape, Ji Hao felt that his body and mind had suddenly become incomparably broad. The entire broad, boundless spirit kiliacosm seemed to have become incomparably narrow, as if it couldn't bear his body at all. A strong impulse of wanting to break this spirit kiliacosm rose from Ji Hao's heart. Because of this impulse, he raised his hand, grabbed the star in the distance, and condensed it into a tiny crystal. At this moment, a feeling of weakness suddenly emerged in Luo Fan's mind. Luo Fan was startled and suddenly sobered up. His heart was filled with shock and fear. Chapter 286. Pure Yang Khanate Dor Luo Fan, who had regained his normal Khanate Taoism aptitude, was as pale as a sheet, and his body was sweating uncontrollably. It should be known that Luo Fan not only had a perfect Khanate Taoism aptitude, but he had also attained the earthly immortal fruit of the way. All the functions of his body were completely self-sufficient. As long as he had enough energy, he would never feel the hunger, thirst, and other negative feelings that ordinary people had. But at this time, he was sweating profusely, which was enough to prove how bad his physical condition was at this time. In fact, at this moment, nearly 80% of the magical power in Luo Fan's body had been consumed. The magical power units in his body had become extremely empty, as if millions of empty shells shaped like Buzhou Mountain had piled up to form that faintly discernible earthly immortal fruit of the way. And his mental strength had been exhausted. At this time, his vision was blurred, and the whole world around him seemed to be spinning. Although the real body of Pangu had infinite power, the huge consumption was not something that Luo Fan could bear at this time. If he had maintained the real body of Pangu for more than a moment, his whole body might have been sucked out and completely swallowed by the real body of Pangu, disappearing without a trace. And as he dispersed the real body of Pangu, the endless stars that had gathered from all directions because of the real body of Pangu suddenly stopped, and then, under the force of the projection of the entire endless starry sky, slowly retreated and returned to their original positions. The various kinds of primordial qi that had originally been rotating along with the real body of Pangu also dispersed in all directions, overflowing with light and dazzling brilliance. Seeing this scene, Luo Fan slightly moved his mind, and the whole spirit space changed automatically. Endless primordial qi crossed the void and directly appeared in his body, pouring into the earthly immortal fruit of the way that was like an empty shell. It was purified and refined, turning into incomparably pure and condensed power that was injected into one magical power unit after another, filling his extremely empty magical power unit. With the influx of this primordial qi, Luo Fan only felt that his spirit gradually calmed down. Although he still felt extremely empty, at least he was no longer dizzy, and he no longer felt the world spinning. Raising a finger, he pointed at the boundless pool of Pangu spirit blood below him. In an instant it quivered, compressed, and shrunk into a 30 meters wide blood-red jade. Fortunately, this was a small kiliacosm. In the primitive world, if Luo Fan wanted to compress Pangu's spirit blood into such a tiny amount, he would have to use some sealing powers and some methods of space-time transformation to do that. However, in this place, the entire space-time was under his control. Naturally, he did not need to do that. With just a slight thought, spacetime would change and directly compress Panga's blood essence. Seeing Panga's blood essence compressed to such a state, Luo Fan's heart stirred again. The space moved automatically. This 30 meters wide drop of Pan-Gu spirit blood crossed the space and directly entered the thunder pool in the center of the small world, then was suppressed by the endless divine thunder. After doing all this, Luo Fan took a step forward, tore open the space of the small kiliacosm, and entered the palace-like medium-class world outside the small kiliacosm. Although the small kiliacosm was complete and mysterious, it was one level lower than the medium-class world after all. After coming to this medium-class world, he directly spread his mind and merged with the whole medium-class world. In an instant, he replaced the limitless boy and controlled everything in this medium-class world. With this change, the void of the Wuji Palace at the top of Buzhou Mountain suddenly shook, producing an incomparably huge suction force. Under this suction force, a huge whirlpool appeared above the liquid primordial energy sea. Endless primordial energy poured into the void of the Wuji Palace under the effect of this suction force, condensing into 129,600 flood dragon-like liquid flow, which poured into the 129,600 acupuncture points of Luo Fan's body out of thin air. Through the special condensing effect of these acupuncture points, the primordial energy poured into his meridians, followed the mysterious path in his meridians, and then into the earthly immortal Tao fruit in his dantian, replenishing his huge Dharma power and mental energy. Although this medium-class world was extremely incomplete, it was a medium-class world after all. The power of a world was so strong that even Luo Fan, who had now achieved the peak of the earthly immortal Tao fruit, could not compare to it, unless he could break through and achieve the primordial unity Tao fruit. Now, with the help of the power of the medium-class world, he attracted the infinite primordial energy into himself to replenish his strength and mental energy. The speed of replenishment was more than 100 times faster than the speed of directly absorbing the primordial energy in the untainted world. In addition, the flow of time in the medium-class world was more than twice that of the untainted world. In this way, his speed of recovery was nearly 200 times faster than when he was recovering himself, after an unknown period of time. Suddenly, Luo Fan's mind moved. He divided a bit of his mind into the spirit space, and instantly grasped the changes in the spirit space. Nearly half a yuan hui had passed in the spirit space, which was more than 60,000 years. In total, Guang Pu had been cultivating in seclusion in this spirit space and recovering her cultivation realm for nearly 190,000 years. At this moment, she had finally recovered her cultivation, and she had even improved a little. The reason why Luo Fan noticed it was because it was difficult for Guang Pu to improve her cultivation through this closed-door cultivation, so he felt a little anxious. In the secret room that was like the void of the universe, Guang Pu stood up, bowed to the void, and said, "I'm ashamed. It took me such a long time to recover." Luo Fan's mind condensed, and a virtual image appeared in front of Guang Pu. "You did well. It took you less than 200,000 years to recover. This is already beyond my expectations, but there's no need to be ashamed." As he spoke, the phantom raised his hand and a simple stone door appeared out of thin air in the secret room. The stone door slowly opened. In addition to a vast and unyielding aura, there was also a powerful pressure accompanied by endless primordial energy. It was a door that led to the untainted world. Guang Pu knew what Luo Fan meant. She felt grateful, bowed, and leisurely stepped into the space-time door. As she stepped into the door, it suddenly closed and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After stepping through the door, Guang Pu came to the top of Buzhou Mountain, above the liquefied primordial energy sea. She looked around, and the world was vast. Her mind, which had been busy for nearly 200,000 years, was completely relaxed in an instant, and became extremely comfortable and happy. Because she was worried about her precious Gua she did not stop. After bowing 4 times in the direction she came from, she turned into a silver escape light and shot down to the bottom of Buzhou Mountain. She was heading towards the space-time illusion. In the space-time illusion, in the valley where Tianxi Daoist was, Luo Chunyang's body was enveloped by an extremely rich pure yang qi. The entire cave abode seemed to be wrapped in a sea of fire under the roasting of the pure yang qi, and even the light was slightly distorted. Under the illumination of the extremely rich pure yang qi, Luo Chunyang was like a golden sun. His body was wrapped in gold, and he looked solemn, like the sun god. The extremely rich pure yang qi was pure and condensed, and extremely agile, like a living thing. It filled the cave abode, as if there were countless fire snakes shuttling and fighting in the cave abode. In Luo Chunyang's mind, the 9-heaven sun transformation technique, created by Luo Fan, had become unrecognizable, and no trace of its original form could be seen. But the essence and mystery of it coincided with the original 9-heaven sun transformation technique. Anyone who saw it could feel that the two were of the same origin, and they were two techniques that complemented each other. As this complicated and strange technique flowed through his mind, Luo Chunyang's mind gradually changed. He felt as if he had become another person. His physical body, which originally existed, had become nothingness, and his body seemed to have become a strange and special existence. This strange and special existence was extremely mysterious, and it had the characteristics of extreme yang, firmness, and purity. It echoed and communicated with something that seemed to exist in the outside world. In this process of mutual communication, his cultivation level was increasing at an incomparably fast speed. Nearly 300 years had passed in the untainted world, nearly 190,000 years had passed in Luo Fan's spirit space, and it was naturally nearly 300 years for the untainted world. Nearly 3,000 years had passed in the space-time illusion. In such a short period of 3,000 years, Luo Chunyang had increased his cultivation realm to a realm that would have taken tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, to reach the peak of the divine fire realm. The incorporeal, invisible, but incomparably strong Khanate door, which prevented all postnatal creatures from entering, had already appeared in his senses. The clarity of the Khanate door even made him feel that he could easily break it open and step into the primordial returning realm. However, it was just a feeling. The Khanate door was unimaginably strong, and it was the biggest obstacle to the integration of postnatal creatures and the Khanate Great Way. Luo Chunyang was the descendant of a postnatal creature and a Khanate god. Although his aptitude was better than ordinary postnatal creatures, the Khanate door was so strong that it could not be broken through so easily. Seriously speaking, Luo Chunyang's feeling that the Khanate door could be broken at any time was just like looking at the scene in a distant place with binoculars. He felt that it was within reach, but in fact, it was hundreds or thousands of meters away. Luo Chunyang gathered his thoughts under that special perception and suddenly blasted the Xiantian door in the dark. Boom! An invisible loud sound exploded in his mind. A strong dizziness suddenly appeared, as if his whole body was about to collapse, as if his whole divine soul was about to explode. Fortunately, at this moment, he was resonating with an existence that seemed to exist but didn't seem to exist between heaven and earth. They complemented each other and communicated with each other. This feeling that almost made one collapse instantly disappeared in the process of communication. His mind and consciousness also returned to normal because of this. He looked at the Khanate door again, but it did not move at all, and there was no sign of it opening. He knew that his accumulation was still insufficient. Although he had reached the peak of the divine fire realm, there was still a long way to go before he could truly break through the divine fire realm and step into the deity reversion realm. He still needed a long time to accumulate. Luo Chunyang sighed and slowly dispersed the mysterious feeling. His mind returned to normal. As his mind recovered, Yi Shiwen's expression changed. The pure yang qi that filled the entire cave dwelling suddenly retracted and disappeared without a trace, as if it had never been there. Luo Chunyang opened his eyes and slowly stood up. Although he was only at the peak of the divine fire realm, Luo Chunyang's cultivation and power were more than 1,000 times stronger than before. Just this action of standing up caused the void around him to vibrate, creating visible air ripples. These air ripples spread out in all directions from where he was and crashed into the walls around the cave abode, producing crackling sounds. The scene was quite grand. Along with this voice, there was also a slight wave of hot air that swept past in an instant. Young man, not bad. I didn't expect you to master the bipolar magnetism mystic technique and develop it to this level. But what is this technique? Why can't I understand it? At this moment, a very familiar voice came into Luo Chunyang's ears. That was the voice of the Khanate god who achieved Tao through magnetism, Tianxi Daoist. Luo Chunyang looked towards the source of the voice and saw Tianxi Daoist standing at the entrance of the cave dwelling, smiling. Looking at his relaxed expression, it seemed like he had been standing there for many years. Of course, Luo Chunyang did not cultivate the bipolar magnetism mystic technique to achieve his current power, but he was not in the mood to explain it to Tianxi Daoist. After all, the relationship between him and Tianxi Daoist was not that close, therefore, he just smiled and said, "Senior Tianxi, I wonder if you, Yuchan, have comprehended any mysteries?" Hearing Luo Chunyang's words, Tianxi Daoist's face lit up as if he had been scratched. He laughed and said, "This is all thanks to you, young man. This Yuchan contains the supreme mystery of the lunar essence. Through studying this Yuchan, I have comprehended the third level of the bipolar magnetism mystic technique. My magical power has improved greatly, and I have even touched the threshold of the next level. In the future, I will have to thank you for my achievements in cultivation." If he had heard this 3,000 years ago, Luo Chunyang would definitely have been interested in the third level of the bipolar magnetism mystic technique that Tianxi Daoist had comprehended. But now, he just smiled and bowed to congratulate him. Through more than 3,000 years of comprehension, he already knew that his 9 Heaven Sun transformation technique contained more profound and mysterious secrets than the jade toad. As long as he tried his best to comprehend the mystery, the benefits he could obtain in the future would be more than 1,000 times greater than the third level of the bipolar magnetism mystic technique. If that was the case, why should he be envious of the third level? Tianxi Daoist originally wanted to show off to Luo Chunyang and then use this technique to extract more benefits from Luo Chunyang. But he didn't expect Luo Chunyang to behave like this. He couldn't help but feel like he had used all his strength to punch the air. He felt rather aggrieved. Luo Chunyang smiled and said, "Senior Tianxi, I haven't seen my parents for thousands of years. I wonder if you can return the Yuchan. I want to go to the place where my father cultivated." Tianxi Daoist opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. He could only raise his hand and release a crystal-clear, fist-sized Yuchan. He handed it to Luo Chunyang. Luo Chunyang took the Yuchan, bowed, and leisurely stepped out. In just a few steps, he had crossed thousands of miles and arrived at the place where Luo Fu cultivated. After Luo Chunyang left, Tianxi Daoist's face fell. What's going on? How come it's only been a few thousand years? His mentality has changed greatly, but even this can't tempt him. Could it be that he has comprehended the true great path that fellow Daoist Luo Fan taught him? When Luo Chunyang arrived at his home from over 3,000 years ago, his expression couldn't help but change slightly. This valley was already vastly different from how it was 3,000 years ago. The valley had become like a fairyland. It was dreamy and illusory, so perfect that it seemed fake. The entire valley was filled with winding streams that resembled jade belts. Flowers bloomed like brocade, and trees stretched endlessly. The entire valley was filled with an extremely warm atmosphere. Why is this? Luo Chunyang frowned. Although the scenery of this valley was beautiful and relaxing, it didn't conform to Luo Chunyang's sense of beauty. It seemed too feminine, too soft. It was completely different from the scenery he had originally designed. He stepped towards the dwelling in his memories. He arrived at the entrance of the dwelling in just a few steps. A strange and profound restriction stood in front of him. This restriction was extremely complicated. Even though he had already reached the peak of the divine fire realm, a single glance at the restriction was enough to make him dizzy. Clearly, the complexity of this restriction had already surpassed the limits of his understanding. Father! Suddenly, a small and tender voice rang out from the restriction and reached Luo Chunyang's ears. When Luo Chunyang heard this voice, a look of realization appeared on his face. Then, he revealed an expression of extreme joy. Bauer has returned, right? At this moment, Luo Fu's somewhat joyful voice rang out in Luo Chunyang's ears. Then, the restriction twisted slightly. A man holding an infant stepped out of the restriction as if he had stepped through a curtain of water, arriving in front of Luo Chunyang. This man was Luo Fu. The infant in his arms was naturally Luo Guo. Greetings, father. Luo Chunyang hadn't seen Luo Fu for thousands of years. Now that he saw him again, he was quite excited. He knelt down and kowtowed. Luo Fu chuckled as he helped Luo Chunyang up. He said, "No need for such formalities. I was just wondering why you had left for so long. I didn't expect you to have gone into seclusion. Not bad, not bad. It looks like you've already sensed the existence of the Khanate door. Don't be anxious. As long as you work hard, your foundation is still not solid enough. Cultivate well in the future and accumulate experience. In the future, you will definitely be able to blast open the Khanate door." "I understand," Luo Chunyang said solemnly. "This is your younger sister. You haven't met her yet, right?" Luo Fu was very pleased to see Luo Chunyang like this. He carried Luo Guo in front of Luo Chunyang and said, Chapter 287. The Opportunity to Achieve the Tao, the Calamity of Luo Fu. Who are you? I don't even know you. Why should I call you brother? Guo rejected him without giving him any face. It was just like what Luo Fan said. Over the past 3,000 years, Luo Guo's growth had been extremely slow. She now looked almost exactly the same as she did 3,000 years ago. There were no signs of growth at all. At this moment, she looked innocent and cute. Even if she didn't give Luo Chunyang face, Luo Chunyang couldn't be angry at her at all. Luo Fu watched Luo Chunyang play with Guo happily. After a while, Luo Fu's expression suddenly changed, and he looked up. 3,000 years was not a short period of time for Luo Fu. Although he needed to take care of Guo, which greatly affected his cultivation, he had made great progress even if he only spent about half of the time to cultivate. Right now, he had already completed more than half of his innate body and innate divine soul. His cultivation level had also improved tremendously. Seriously speaking, his power had increased a lot compared to 3,000 years ago. Junior sister. Looking at the void for a while, as if he was sensing something carefully, Luo Fu's face suddenly showed a surprised expression, and he murmured. As expected, when his expression changed slightly, Luo Chunyang also sensed a strange feeling at the same time. This feeling seemed to be very familiar to him, as if there was a very fast aura coming from afar. Just when he reacted, this aura had already arrived outside the valley, and suddenly landed, revealing its true appearance. It was Guo Pu, who directly rushed into the space-time illusion after coming out from the closed-door training on the top of Buzhou Mountain. Although they had met thousands of years ago, Guo Pu had something on her mind at that time. She was mostly discussing with Luo Fu about how to help Guo, and did not have much communication with Luo Chunyang. Therefore, there was not much difference between seeing each other and not seeing each other. At this moment, Luo Chunyang saw Guo Pu again, and the joy and excitement in his heart were no less than the last time they met. Mom Gua grew very slowly, which meant that her concept of time was different from ordinary living beings. To her, the past 3,000 years were not that different from yesterday. Therefore, she still remembered Guang Pu. When Guang Pu heard this tender voice, he was incomparably agitated and his eyes instantly turned red. Good girl, good girl. What happened next was naturally a joyous and harmonious scene of a family. But there was no need to say more. The family of 4 lived in this valley in harmony for 3 years. In these 3 years, because he was calm, his taut heartstrings were completely relaxed. Luo Fu's cultivation realm was many times faster than before. One day, he was enlightened. From the Dantian soul-shaping technique, he comprehended a method to evolve his thoughts. He sensed that there was something in the time and space illusion that had a great destiny with him. It was the key to him achieving the Tao. So, Luo Fu wanted to say goodbye to his family to look for that thing. But because he didn't want to leave the warm and harmonious family, he suppressed his impulse and continued to live in this valley. On this day, 3 years later, an inexplicable warning suddenly appeared in his heart. This warning was about the key thing for him to achieve Tao. This feeling, it seems that if I don't go, something that I will regret for the rest of my life will happen. Luo Fu was experienced and knowledgeable. He carefully felt this warning and knew the seriousness of this warning. At this moment, no matter how reluctant he was to part with his family of 4 in the valley, he had no choice but to explain to Guang Pu and the others that he needed to leave for a period of time to search for his own destiny. Senior brother, why didn't you say so earlier? The opportunity is very important. You and I will be together for countless years. How can we delay the opportunity because of the happiness of being together? Guang Pu was anxious. Well, it's not a delay. It's just that the opportunity was not urgent at that time. Luo Fu was in the wrong, so he could only say that. Dad, it's not that I want to criticize you, but opportunities are very mysterious. You might not be able to find them again once the time is past. This time, you really made a mistake. Luo Chunyang also chimed in. Dad, you are wrong. Gua added fuel to the fire. Luo Fu was ignored by everyone. He couldn't help but look ashamed. He said, I'm going now. You guys can wait at home. I feel that this opportunity is only about me, and it has nothing to do with you guys. As he said that, he stamped his feet and his body turned into a long rainbow, rushing straight to the northwest. The spacetime illusion was rather vast, but Luo Fu's speed was not slow either. In a short while, he had traversed tens of thousands of miles and arrived somewhere in the northwest of the spacetime illusion. There was a mountain here. The shape of this mountain was very strange. It was completely different from an ordinary mountain. It was like a huge fist standing on the ground. A very strange aura was emitted from this mountain. This kind of aura was very mysterious. It seemed to be very obvious but also very obscure. It seemed to show its existence to the whole world, but it seemed that only Luo Fu could barely feel it. It was too wonderful for words. Luo Fu's body shook, and the long rainbow condensed. Then, he landed on the thumb of the fist. At this moment, Luo Fu was quite happy. Since he could feel the abnormality of this mountain, it proved that this mountain was not simple. The opportunity that he felt was probably in this mountain. At this moment, a leisurely voice came from the fist of the mountain and flowed into Luo Fu's ears. I don't know which Taoism friend has come to my place. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you. What's going on? How did this place become someone else's territory? Luo Fu was shocked. Although there was a mysterious aura in this mountain, apart from that, he did not feel the existence of any other living beings. At this moment, such a voice suddenly appeared. How could he not be shocked? I am Luo Fu. I have something hidden in the good end, but I don't know when this place has become your cave. Please forgive me for being rude. No matter what was going on, the fact that this person was able to speak out of Luo Fu's perception meant that this person was much stronger than him. Regardless of whether what he said was true or false, Luo Fu didn't dare to be careless. Fortunately, he was not confused. He insisted that he had a treasure hidden in this mountain, so that he would not have an excuse to look for it in this mountain later. Oh? There's such a thing? A surprised voice came from the fist. Then, a red light rushed out from the fist, crossed hundreds of miles, and landed on the thumb of the mountain. Then, it condensed into the figure of an old woman. This old woman had white hair and a ruddy face. Her body was slightly bent, and there was not a trace of aura coming out from her body. She looked like the most ordinary old woman that Luo Fu had seen in the Void Wuji Palace's spirit space. "You're Luo Fu? What's your relationship with the owner of the space-time illusion?" The old woman looked at Luo Fu and asked. "I'm ashamed. This space-time illusion was created by my father. Otherwise, how could I survive in this illusion with my low cultivation?" Luo Fu bowed and said, "So you're the son of Taoist Luo Fan. I'm really impolite." The old woman's attitude toward Luo Fu became a lot more respectful. "I took the wrong path before, so my cultivation stagnated. Thanks to Taoist Luo Fan's correction, I was able to make a big breakthrough. Since you're the son of Taoist Luo Fan, you can do whatever you want with my cave house. It's not a problem even if you turn it upside down." The old woman continued. When Luo Fu heard the old woman's words, he could not help but reveal a slightly embarrassed expression. However, he would not be stupid enough to tell the truth directly. He just bowed and said, "Junior is impolite. This is Senior's cave house. Junior shouldn't be so presumptuous here. However, the thing buried in the mountain is a treasure that I obtained thousands of years ago. It's related to Junior's chance of success, so I can't ignore it. I hope Senior can forgive me." "So it was buried thousands of years ago." "That's right. It's only been over 1,000 years since I set up a cave here. It's my fault, so you're reaping what you sow." The old woman chuckled. With that said, he nodded and his figure shook. He turned into a red light that shot into the void and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. He didn't know where she went. Luo Fu was secretly shocked. Looking at this movement and this divine art, this person's cultivation level was probably not any weaker than his junior sister Guang Pu's. He couldn't help but rejoice in his heart that the thing he was biting on was hidden here by him. Otherwise, things would be very troublesome. After thinking for a while, Luo Fu's figure flashed and turned into a rainbow. He rushed toward the place where he felt his opportunity was. It was located in the depths of the fist-sized mountain. In other words, it was the central area where the bottom of the mountain and the wrist touched. What Luo Fu felt was where his opportunity was. It was the starry futon that Luo Fan specially sent into the space-time illusion a long time ago. The starry futon was an extremely wonderful treasure that could assist in cultivation. It could communicate with the endless starry sky and attract endless chaotic qi. It could also set up a starry formation to simulate the endless starry sky. It could capture and trap people and exert infinite power. Such a mysterious treasure was buried at the bottom of the mountain for such a long time. Its power gradually came into play and gradually affected the mountain. This caused the already extraordinary mountain to become even more mysterious and inconceivable. The entire mountain seemed to have been refined into an extremely exquisite treasure that possessed some power to assist in cultivation. It was also because of this that this large mountain was valued by the old lady whose cultivation was not inferior to Guangpu, and she set up her cave dwelling here, under the guidance of his soul. Luo Fu directly drilled into the mountain. Luo Fu was also in the deity reversion state now. He was already quite powerful. If he was in the future, he would be a grandmaster who founded a sect. It was naturally not a problem for him to drill through mountains and cross oceans. Soon, Luo Fu arrived at the bottom of the mountain. It was a small space that was less than 3 meters in diameter. This space was very narrow. There was not a trace of light in it. In the middle of it lay an ordinary, simple and unadorned cattail hassock that didn't seem to have any special abilities. Although there was no light, Luo Fu could see everything in this space clearly. The moment he saw the starry futon, an extremely mysterious feeling appeared in Luo Fu's mind. I must get this treasure. This treasure is related to whether I can attain the fruit of Tao in the future. It is related to whether I can help Father in the future. This thought instantly filled Luo Fu's mind. With this thought in mind, Luo Fu did not hesitate to leap towards the praying mat. Just as he was about to collide with the starry praying mat, a formless yet incomparably powerful and flexible barrier suddenly appeared between him and the praying mat. It blocked and shook Luo Fu, who had already turned into a streak of light, causing the streak of light to roll back and condense into Luo Fu's figure once more. So it is this treasure that makes this mountain so different. Looks like my decision was right, hee hee. A voice that was familiar to Luo Fu but also extremely unfamiliar suddenly rang in Luo Fu's ears. Luo Fu was shocked. His reaction speed was also quite shocking. There was nothing more to say about his memory. In the blink of an eye, he had already figured out who this voice belonged to. This voice was clearly the voice of the seemingly easy-going old woman. However, compared to the old woman's voice just now, this voice was full of evil and greed. It was as if they were two completely different people. At this moment, endless blood light suddenly filled this space with a radius of 3 meters. In this blood light, an old woman with white hair and a ruddy complexion slowly walked out. "Senior, what do you mean?" Luo Fu frowned. He forcefully suppressed the surging power in his body and asked, "Don't you know what I mean?" The old woman laughed sinisterly. "Have you forgotten that this space-time illusion was created by my father? Everything that happens here is under his control?" Luo Fu said lightly. Although it was his first time facing this kind of enemy who had achieved Tao, he did not have much fear in his heart. The Dantian spirit shaping method that Luo Fan taught him was a cultivation method that refined both the body and the spirit. With the help of this cultivation method, Luo Fu's Taoist heart had been tempered to a considerable degree. Although he was facing such a powerful opponent, he still did not have the slightest fear. "Are you talking about the idiot who has just achieved Tao at the entrance of the illusion? If I had known that the idiot only had this little strength, I would have killed him long ago. Why would I have found a place with thin fake energy for thousands of years?" The old woman laughed strangely. Hearing this old woman's words, Luo Fu's expression became very ugly. His mind was filled with an indescribable anger. If this old woman had insulted him, he would not have cared too much. He would have just turned a deaf ear to it. However, this old woman was insulting his father, whom he respected from the bottom of his heart. "Shut up!" Luo Fu roared. At the same time, a white light suddenly rushed out from the top of his head. Along with the white light, there was an extremely strong and shocking tiger roar. An extremely powerful aura was emitted from the white light, and it rushed towards the old woman. The white light instantly condensed into a white tiger in midair. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, and it charged towards the old woman with infinite power. The old woman's expression did not change at all. She raised her hand and gently patted the white tiger. The white tiger seemed to have been hit by an extremely terrifying power, and it instantly stopped. Then, it was wrapped by an extremely condensed blood mist, as if it had been wrapped by an extremely tight blood net. "It's a good ritual implement, but the person using it is too weak," the old woman said sinisterly. Along with these words, Luo Fu only felt that his entire head, his entire soul, and his entire sea of consciousness had received an extremely huge impact. An indescribable pain suddenly filled his entire mind. His body instantly bent over, and he let out a muffled groan. The white tiger frantically struggled in the blood net, but it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Could not move the bloodlight at all. The bloodlight was still firmly wrapped around the white tiger. The old woman reached out and grabbed, and the blood light wrapped around the white tiger was sucked into her palm. With a flash, it disappeared without a trace. "How dare you!" Luo Fu roared, and he violently spat out a large mouthful of blood. His face turned ashen. When the white tiger disappeared without a trace, he instantly felt that the connection between him and the ritual implement that was originally one with him had been completely severed. This ritual implement that he had refined for over a period of time had been taken away by the old woman. The old woman did not care about Luo Fu at all. She raised her hand and grabbed towards the ordinary praying mat that was lying in the center of the space. This star praying mat was specially prepared by Luo Fan for Luo Fu. The moment the old woman reached out, endless starlight suddenly burst out. This starlight was condensed and pure, and as if it was solid, it suddenly blasted towards the old woman's palm. An inanimate object dares to be presumptuous in front of me? The old woman sneered. Her hand was wrapped in a layer of blood light, and like tearing through tofu, she completely crushed the starlight that was enough to turn a 300,000-meter tall mountain into powder. She directly grabbed the star praying mat. The starry praying mat vibrated rapidly, and crackling sounds rang out continuously during this process of vibration. All the energy in the space was mobilized by the intense shaking and instantly became extremely chaotic. It was as if countless hurricanes were compressing and raging in the space. The old woman's expression turned solemn, and the blood light on her body wildly surged. An invisible force seemed to be transmitted to her through some mysterious connection, and along with the blood light on her body, it pressed into the star praying mat, causing the star praying mat to gradually be wrapped in a layer of blood light that grew thicker and thicker. This caused the star praying mat's shaking to become weaker and weaker. Chapter 288. Water Element Field, Crystal Palace. After completely suppressing the star cattail cushion that Luo Fan had specially made for Luo Fu, the old woman still wanted to continue. She turned her head to look at the pale and dispirited Luo Fu and laughed strangely. Hee. Although I don't know why, Master's order is to capture you alive. You're lucky. Otherwise, I would have killed you with your current eyesight. You want to use me to threaten Father? Don't even think about it. Hearing the old woman's words, Luo Fu instantly understood a lot. A trace of determination appeared in his eyes, and he spat out a cold and resolute voice. Then, with a thought, his innate spirit, which he had cultivated with great difficulty, began to burn from the inside to the outside. After the flame was ignited, the mysterious power in Luo Fu's body also ignited, bursting out a power that was 100 times stronger than before. A powerful aura exuded from Luo Fu's body. The space-time illusion was a space between reality and illusion. The stability of the space was naturally far less than that of the untainted land, and even less than that of Luo Fan's mini-kiliocosm. Under the impact of the power that erupted from Luo Fu's body, which was 100 times stronger than usual, the space around him was slightly distorted, and a visible spatial ripple spread in all directions. You're so unyielding. Fortunately, I've covered this area with the field that Master gave me, otherwise, I might not be able to deal with you, the old woman said in surprise. As she said this, a very mysterious and powerful invisible power suddenly appeared in the surrounding space. This wave of energy contained an eerie chill, and contained an inconceivably profound secret. In an instant it froze Luo Fu's mind, causing the powerful aura that emanated from Luo Fu's body to freeze for a moment, and then completely disappear in the blink of an eye. All of his thoughts stopped there, maintaining the state of detonating all of his divine soul and all of his power. Damn it! This was the only thought that appeared in Luo Fu's mind before it froze. Along with all these changes, the mysterious flame that enveloped Luo Fu's innate divine soul and physical body instantly disappeared without a trace. Luckily, I made it in time. I didn't expect that I would have detonated half of my soul and power in such a short amount of time. If I was a little slower, I'm afraid I wouldn't have made it in time, and I would have been scolded by Master. That Luo Fan's other abilities are ordinary, but his ability to commit suicide is quite shocking. The old woman raised her hand and covered Luo Fu. She instantly grasped Luo Fu's current state, and couldn't help but feel scared. With a thought in her heart, she raised her hand and put away the star meditation cushion that was wrapped in a blood-red light, and Luo Fu, who had even his thoughts frozen, into her sleeve. Her figure flashed, and she transformed into a red streak of light that shot up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through. The mountain peak that looked like a fist appeared in the thick ground. After it rushed out of the ground, there was a loud rumble. The ground shook violently, and the fist-sized mountain suddenly collapsed, turning into countless tiny grains of sand that poured in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge, short pile of sand. It was as if the fist-sized mountain was originally a pile of sand. This was because the old woman's departure had caused the domain that she had distributed at the bottom of the mountain to collapse. The collapse of the domain had produced an extremely powerful impact that instantly destroyed the entire mountain's foundation, causing the mountain to collapse in an instant. The moment the mountain collapsed, the clone that was sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the space-time illusion suddenly shook. As if it had sensed something, it turned its head and looked at the space-time illusion. Its gaze instantly penetrated countless obstacles, and it directly saw the collapsed mountain. The space-time illusion was created by Luo Fan, and everything that happened in the illusion was under his control. However, it was obvious that it was impossible for him to monitor the entire space-time illusion at all times. Therefore, it did not find out what had happened before the mountain collapsed, nor could it find out why the mountain had collapsed. Something seems wrong, the clone pondered. At this moment, a blood-red conveyance light directly broke through the space-time illusion and shot out in the southwest direction. Luo Fan's doppelganger magical treasure frowned. Its memory was quite amazing, and it naturally remembered that the nature of the power of this conveyance light was the nature of the power cultivated by an innate god invited by Yu Su more than 100 years ago. "Where are you going, my friend?" Luo Fan was naturally quite curious about this innate god, who was about to leave after staying in the space-time illusion for more than 100 years, so he asked. His voice was faint and light, as if he was just talking to himself, but it spread far and wide, directly catching up with the extremely fast blood-red conveyance light and entering the ears of the person in the conveyance light. In that conveyance light, of course, was the old woman. The power of the space-time illusion created by Luo Fan was amazing and incredible, but he did not intend to imprison these people in the space-time illusion, so he did not open the illusion to trap people. Because of this, the old woman instantly broke through the space-time illusion with a force that was even stronger than Guang Pu's, and escaped. "I remember that there is still a Taoism friend outside. I don't want him to go astray, so I want to invite him to come here," the old woman said casually. During this process, she did not stop, but urged the conveyance light to speed up, and in the blink of an eye, she had already flown tens of thousands of miles away. Luo Fan instantly felt that something was wrong. He raised his hand and calculated with the yin-yang test method. Suddenly, his face changed. "How dare you? How dare you play a conspiracy in front of me?" It was at that moment that he had calculated the cause and effect, and knew that Luo Fu had actually fallen into the hands of this innate deity. "I didn't expect that there would be a day when I would fail miserably, humph." Luo Fan was angry in his heart. He looked around and sensed carefully, but he found that he had lost the figure of the old woman. At that moment, the old woman had used a hidden method that Luo Fan did not understand to avoid his perception. At this time, he did not know where she had escaped to. At this moment, Luo Fan's state could be said to be the worst in this Yuanhui. His body was extremely empty. At this time, he was in the dimensional realm of Limitless Void Palace. He was using the dimensional realm's super-strong suction force to absorb the endless chaos origin energy into his Earth Immortal Tao fruit. His mind and spirit were nearly completely consumed. Although he was constantly restoring himself, he still wasn't able to restore himself. In this case, apart from the doppelganger celestial device, he could only use magic treasures. Sensing the change of the situation here, Luo Fan's body in the Infinite Void Palace's dimensional world moved his mind. The Zhifang seal in his sea of consciousness trembled, broke into a mysterious place, and rushed out of his body. Then, it turned into a teenager. It was Zhifang boy. After the little boy Zhifang appeared, he calmly bowed towards Luo Fan. Then, he turned around and turned into a beam of light that shot out from the dimensional realm, rapidly shooting towards the direction that the old woman had disappeared in. At the same time, Luo Fan's doppelganger celestial tool also moved and soared upwards. In a short while, it had already merged with Zhifang boy and turned into a long rainbow. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at the place where the old woman had last appeared. There was a mountain that was more than 2 million feet high. This mountain stood between heaven and earth, and it was very tall. If this mountain was in any other place, it would be an incomparably huge mountain that could suppress the world, and it would make people feel incomparable reverence. But here, at such a close distance from Buzhou Mountain, this mountain was as inconspicuous as a small piece of sand at the foot of the Himalayas. Luo Fan's mind moved, and the long rainbow descended. At the top of the mountain, Luo Fan's figure appeared with a seal floating 3 feet above his head. She disappeared here, so she must have left some traces here. Luo Fan's expression was calm. He raised his hand and grasped the air, and tens of thousands of strange, invisible existences fell into his hand. These were the tens of thousands of auras left behind here. Among these auras there was the aura of wind, the aura of rain, the aura left behind by Xiantian origin energy, the aura left behind by chaotic origin energy, and even the aura left behind by life and death. Luo Fan carefully distinguished these auras, and his frown deepened. Among these tens of thousands of auras, there was not a single aura that belonged to the old lady. Looks like things are going to get tricky. Luo Fan instantly understood. As for Luo Fu's safety, Luo Fan was not very worried at this moment. The old lady's strength was obviously much stronger than what he had perceived. Even Guang Pu might not be able to escape from her hands. No matter how strong Luo Fu was, he would not be able to resist her at all. If the old lady wanted to kill Luo Fu, it would only take a single thought. But now that Luo Fu had been taken away, this proved that the old lady or the person behind her needed Luo Fu to be alive. Lifting his hand and dispersing the tens of thousands of auras in his hand, Luo Fan sat cross-legged. His mind and will reached out from his body, and connected with some mysterious, strange, and inconceivable existence. Then, countless images flashed through his mind and will. At the same time, an endless amount of innate energy surged into the clone from all directions, and then disappeared without a trace through some mysterious and incredible method, exchanging these images that flashed through his mind with that mysterious and incredible existence. Luo Fan carefully observed these images and carefully analyzed the scenes described in these images. Less than 2 hours later, the top of the mountain had turned into a huge whirlpool, as if there was a huge eye connected to the top of the mountain. Suddenly, an extremely powerful impact suddenly erupted from the top of the mountain. As the impact erupted, the huge whirlpool was instantly torn to pieces. The Xiantian Yuan Qi that formed the whirlpool scattered in all directions like countless meteors. It was as if a gorgeous rain had fallen. She finally couldn't take it anymore. That's good too, it'll save me a lot of trouble. Luo Fan sneered. Earlier, he'd relied on a method of deduction within the deduction volume of the Tao Fruit scripture to deduce the direction the old woman had gone. This calculation method was better than the yin-yang calculation method, but not as good as the earthly immortals' heavenly escape formation. Of course, the consumption was naturally more than the yin-yang calculation method, but it was much less than the earthly immortals' heavenly escape formation. Through the calculation just now, although he hadn't found the old woman's specific location, he had found some clues. He roughly figured out who was plotting against him. He stood up, looked around, and chose the direction he had previously calculated. Then, he jumped up, turned into a long rainbow, and quickly shot out. This magic clone itself carried Luo Fan's mind and will, and it was supported by a powerful magic treasure like Xifang Boy. With the support of Boy Xifang's powerful magic treasure, although its power was not comparable to Luo Fan's, it was comparable to a cultivator who had reached the true immortal realm. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed hundreds of thousands of miles. At this moment, Luo Fan already had a definite target. He flew all the way, not stopping for even a moment, nor did he deflect in the slightest. After half a day, he had already flown more than 10 billion kilometers. At this moment, the place he had arrived at was above an incomparably deep pond. This deep pool was more than 12,000 kilometers in diameter. Its surface was calm, and the clouds and sun in the sky were reflected like a second sky. Luo Fan's long rainbow stopped, and his figure appeared, stopping 100 miles above the deep pool. When he appeared, he couldn't help but frown. This deep pool seemed calm and ordinary, but the spring water contained in it emitted an extremely strong and shocking cold air. Even though he was hundreds of kilometers away, Luo Fan could feel that his body was almost frozen. With a wave of his hand, a large amount of pure water gushed out of his hand and poured down like a waterfall. The large amount of pure water completely froze into ice in less than an instant after leaving his finger and fell down like a stone. After a long while, the sound of something shattering could be heard from below. It actually contains a lot of connate water essence. This is also a cultivation treasure land. Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh when he saw this. He looked down and instantly saw the pool of water. He also realized the nature of the pool of water. The connate water essence was a connate material. Its preciousness was not rare in the primordial world, but it was rare for there to be so many of them gathered together. As long as the number of existences increased to a certain extent, there would be a qualitative change. The connate water essence was naturally no exception. With so many connate water essence gathered together, it could create a very strange water elemental domain in the depth. If one cultivated in this water elemental domain, their cultivation speed would be at least 10 times faster than in the outside world. No matter what kind of cultivation method they cultivated, after seeing 10,000 kilometers below, Luo Fan was even more convinced that this was the place he was looking for. Because with his eyesight, he should not have been able to see 10,000 kilometers below. With a slight thought, the ultimate square seal floating 3 feet above his head turned and fell. It turned into a ray of light and suddenly sank down, fusing with Luo Fan's seal. Then, Luo Fan turned into a ray of white light and threw himself into the deep pool hundreds of kilometers below. In a short while, he had already crashed into the deep pool. The bone-piercing cold air seeped in from all directions, causing Luo Fan to shiver. Fortunately, he was prepared. In an instant, his power surged and directly blocked the cold air outside his body, allowing his body to completely escape the influence of the cold air. His figure rushed down the pool. The lower he went, the heavier the cold air was. At the same time, there was a very strange force around him that was constantly oppressing him, making the power he needed to move forward become greater and greater. In this case, it took Luo Fan a full hour to sink to the depths of the pool. Arriving here, Luo Fan's figure suddenly stopped there, and then his figure came out. The scene in front of him surprised him, but also felt that it was reasonable. It was just like the saying, unexpected but reasonable. Here, what he saw was a splendid scene of gold and jade. Hundreds of kilometers below, there was an extremely vast group of palaces. The palace complex occupied an area of hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, and every single palace was emitting all sorts of mystical lights. These lights interweaved together to form a vast and majestic building complex that exuded boundless might. Anyone who looked at it would have the illusion that they were incomparably small and insignificant. I didn't expect that in such a short period of tens of thousands of years, it has developed so much. If I wait any longer, won't it be dangerous? Luo Fan thought to himself. This group of palaces reminded Luo Fan of a certain legendary existence, the Crystal Palace. The building materials of the palaces were all very precious, and could be used to refine more than a dozen celestial devices. A single kind of refining material was not very precious, but such a large amount of it was so valuable that even Luo Fan could not help but be moved. The palaces below were not in the water, but in a waterless space supported by some invisible force. This waterless space was very mysterious, and the boundary between it and the pool was very vague. The change was natural, as if this waterless space was not supported by force, but the pool itself. This was the water realm that appeared because of the huge amount of innate Gui water essence. This realm was like a small world. As long as one refined this realm, it was equivalent to having his own world. In this water realm, in this small world, the refiner was almost omnipotent. Without a strength that was 100 times stronger than the refiner, it was absolutely impossible to gain any advantage. Since you've already found me, why don't you come out? Since you dared to lure me here, don't you dare to come out to see me? Luo Fan said lightly. His voice was leisurely and calm, and it slowly spread into the water realm below. It kept echoing in this water realm, so that any living creature in this water realm could hear it, but it did not feel harsh. Chapter 289. Haha. Sure enough, you managed to find this place without any clues. You deserve your reputation as the most powerful person in the untainted land. A vague, illusory, grand voice came out of the water elemental field and entered Luo Fan's ears. It was as if the entire world was trembling and emitting these sounds. Luo Fan's expression changed slightly. The weakest among the thousands of auras had attained the Tao. The impact formed by the fusion of thousands of powerful auras was so powerful that even Luo Fan could not ignore it. I didn't expect such a powerful force to be hidden in the untainted land. This is beyond my imagination. It seems that I have taken it for granted. Luo Fan sighed with a complicated expression. At this moment, a gray shadow suddenly rushed out of the largest crystal palace in the water elemental field. In the blink of an eye, it rushed hundreds of miles away and arrived in front of Luo Fan. As it descended, it condensed into a figure about 30 feet tall. This person looked like a middle-aged man. He was extremely strong and wore a tight armor. He looked mighty like a sculpture and was filled with an indescribable masculine charm. On its forehead there was a third eye. The third eye shone with an indescribable light, as if it could see through everything. Luo Fan thought about it. He already knew that this person's cultivation was equivalent to the peak of the earthly immortal realm. He was only one step away from breaking through the itinerant immortal realm and becoming a perfected immortal. Ha ha! When I first came to the untainted land, I didn't know where you were. I was wondering when such a powerful cultivator appeared in the untainted land and obstructed our plan to devour the untainted land. The three-eyed middle-aged man laughed loudly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a light sound was heard. Then, several rays of light rushed out of the water elemental field and instantly landed beside the three-eyed middle-aged man. The light condensed and turned into 6 figures. Among these figures, there were 5 that were over 10 meters tall. There were both men and women, and all of them were extremely powerful. They displayed the charm and might of the bodies of men and women to the highest level, causing others to feel that only with such appearances would they be able to live up to their status as men and women. However, the 6th person was an old lady. The old woman had a stooped figure, white hair, and a ruddy complexion. Her eyes flashed with a sinister and ruthless light. He was the complete opposite of the other 5. This old woman was the one who had captured Luo Fu. As soon as these 6 people appeared, Luo Fan frowned. These 6 people were clearly the innate gods that were born in the primordial world. Their current appearance was not their natural body, but the result of cultivation. You have the body of an innate god, but you actually cultivated the extraterritorial art. It's really a pity that you have cultivated to such a state. Luo Fan shook his head and sighed. I knew you would say that. As a living creature born in the primordial world, you really can't jump out of the mold of the region. You always think that only the primordial world is the center of the chaos, and that the freedom of the primordial world is the strongest. You don't know that the primordial world is only a corner of the chaos, and the freedom of the primordial world is not necessarily the strongest. For example, your precious son has cultivated your freedom of the primordial world for so long, but he has only reached his current strength. He can't even obtain immortality. How can he be like my subordinates? The 3-eyed middle-aged man said to Luo Fan with a condescending attitude. I don't have such a narrow view of the primordial world. It's just that the most suitable is the best. As innate gods born in the primordial world, they are naturally the most suitable to cultivate the freedom of the primordial world. Only then can they cultivate to the highest realm. Although people like you can quickly cultivate a longevity body, I'm afraid that this is already your limit at this stage. What a pity! Originally, I was wondering why this Taoist friend Yuda's freedom of the primordial world was so extreme. It turns out that it's because it's from the outer domain. Luo Fan said expressionlessly. Ha ha! The limit they've encountered is just that their accumulation is not deep enough. As long as they devour other innate gods, their accumulation will increase, and they can continue to improve. You don't need to worry about this. Let's not talk about this matter. Do you know why I led you here? The 3-eyed middle-aged man said casually, and then changed the topic. Luo Fan frowned slightly. Although the 3-eyed middle-aged man had said it casually, he had already heard a lot of cruelty in it, and he also understood the essence of the freedom of the primordial world. The method taught by the 3-eyed middle-aged man was a violent method to stimulate one's potential. This was also the reason why the innate gods who practiced this method could obtain super powerful strength at the fastest speed and thus obtain the immortal body. Any innate god was born with a strong foundation, so it was only a matter of time before he achieved the Tao and obtained the immortal body. However, the method taught by the 3-eyed middle-aged man was too violent, and its power was too strong. Although it could let the cultivator quickly obtain super strong cultivation, it would also consume the cultivator's potential, which would affect his future progress. If the cultivator wanted to improve, there was only one way. That was to devour more innate gods, and take the potential of those innate gods. In this way, he could continue to stimulate his potential, and continue to improve. However, the further he went, the more difficult it would be to improve his cultivation, and the thicker the accumulation, and the stronger the foundation. From knowing nothing to cultivating immortality, perhaps he only needed his own accumulation, but to cultivate to the realm of true immortality, he would probably need to devour more than 10 cultivators of the same level. To reach the realm of golden immortals, he would need more than 100 locusts. Luo Fan suddenly thought of a word. The cultivators who cultivated this method were like locusts, and no matter which world they entered, they would only bring about disasters. I see. You must have cultivated this method for a long time. Judging from your appearance, you seem to have stayed in this realm for a long time, and you must have devoured many innate gods. If I continue to devour it now, it should no longer be effective. Well, at your realm, you can only improve by devouring cultivators of my realm. Luo Fan said calmly. These words had unknowingly answered the 3-eyed middle-aged man's previous question. Furthermore, it had analyzed the 3-eyed middle-aged man's condition. It was a psychological attack. Haha, smart. Then you should know what to do, right? You don't need me to threaten you. The three-eyed middle-aged man was a little surprised, and then he laughed. Then, he waved his hand, and the old woman called Yuda raised her hand, and Luo Fu's stiff figure appeared out of thin air. At this time, Luo Fan was outside the water elemental field. The three-eyed middle-aged man and his 6 subordinates were all inside the water elemental field. The method that Yuda used to subdue Luo Fu was with the help of a small part of the water elemental field given by the three-eyed middle-aged man. At this time, in the water elemental field, Luo Fu naturally could not wake up, and even his thoughts were stagnant, and he could not react to any changes in the outside world. So, you opened up a space inside your body. No wonder I couldn't find any trace of divine power. Luo Fan smiled. The three-eyed middle-aged man frowned. Oh no. Then, his third eye suddenly shot out a gray light, and with this gray light, the whole water elemental field changed. The void shook violently. In an instant, a void of billions of miles appeared in front of Luo Fan, and the 7 of them were completely separated from Luo Fan. At the same time, billions of thunderbolts appeared out of nowhere, and condensed into many electric dragons. They surged from all directions, and fiercely pounced towards Luo Fan. The only mistake you made was that you were too greedy. Luo Fan smiled faintly. As soon as he finished speaking, the old woman suddenly let out a miserable shriek. Then, her whole body was hit by a terrifying force, and she swelled up like a balloon. In an instant, she swelled up into a ball, and her limbs and head were like strips of cloth stuck on the balloon, flying around randomly. The old woman's face revealed an extremely panicked expression. "Master, save me!" Rumble, a loud explosion was heard. The old woman's whole body exploded into a huge fireball, and a huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Bright starlight pierced out from the mushroom cloud, and instantly broke through the incomparably obvious mushroom cloud, as if countless starlight formed a sharp blade, and directly cut towards the 6 people beside the old woman. That huge scene, even though it was billions of miles away, was still vivid in Luo Fan's mind. At this moment, the billions of thunder dragons had already arrived in front of Luo Fan, and fiercely blasted towards Luo Fan. Luo Fan faintly smiled. He raised his hand and clapped. Boundless yellow light rushed out from the palm of his hand and instantly condensed into a huge 3-dimensional talisman. Like a net, the talisman flew towards the hundreds of millions of thunder dragons. The billions of thunder dragons rushed into the 3-dimensional talisman without any hindrance. In an instant they completely disappeared without a trace, and not even a ripple was stirred up, but the incomparably huge 3-dimensional talisman was dyed in a blazing white color, and between the entanglement of the electric light, the 3-dimensional talisman seemed to be condensed by the electric light. Luo Fan raised his hand, and the huge 3-dimensional talisman shrank and shrank, and in the blink of an eye, it fell into his right hand, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into the shape of a fist-sized ball. This fist-sized ball was white with a hint of yellow, and there were countless strange patterns on it, forming an incomparably mysterious structure, containing infinite energy in it. At this moment, the gray light that gushed out of the 3-eyed middle-aged man's eyes meandered, forming a complicated and mysterious big formation, accompanied by the power of the realm that was enough to destroy the world, and crushed towards the place that the old woman's explosion had produced, which was also the place where the endless starlight was shooting towards them at this moment. A faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. With a slight shift of his mind, the endless starlight suddenly withdrew, and instantly revealed an extremely ordinary, seemingly ordinary, and without the slightest special futon. This futon was the starry futon that the old woman had put away. After this starry futon appeared, it instantly disintegrated, as if it was formed by the accumulation of countless tiny starlight, turning into billions of starlight, shooting in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it covered an area of billions of miles, and instantly covered the entire water element realm. Under the cover of this endless starlight, a mysterious and indescribable aura filled the world. The entire water element realm instantly changed into an endless starry sky, and the distance of billions of miles between the three-eyed middle-aged man and the other five, which was no less than that of Luo Fan, was filled with starlight. "What is this?" The three-eyed middle-aged man finally lost his composure and exclaimed. The big formation formed by the gray light from his third eye instantly became empty, as if it was formed by gossamer, and completely lost its power. The whole water element realm was covered by the endless starlight, and the big formation lost the support of the realm power, and its power was greatly reduced. This small formation rushed into the endless starlight, and like a small stone sinking into the bottom of the sea, it couldn't even cause a ripple, and disappeared without a trace. Luo Fan took a step forward, and instantly crossed the distance of billions of miles, arriving where the old woman was. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Luo Fu, whose body was stiff and whose mind was stagnant, out of the void. Raising his hand, Luo Fu took a deep breath, and suddenly made a defensive posture. The power in his body surged, and it seemed like he was about to ignite again. Luo Fan raised his hand, pointed at his forehead, and said, "What are you waiting for if you don't wake up now?" As he said this, endless spiritual light shot out from his hand, and like the sun, it illuminated the surroundings several miles. With this flash of spiritual light, Luo Fu finally opened his eyes, and completely woke up. Seeing Luo Fan, how could Luo Fu not understand what had happened? He couldn't help but bow in shame and said, "I've embarrassed you, father." Luo Fan raised his hand to help him up and said, "We'll talk about this later." With that, he raised his hand, and Luo Fu was taken into the space inside the celestial tool. At this moment there was a celestial tool. It wasn't a storage celestial tool, but as a celestial tool with many uses, it naturally had a space inside. The space wasn't big, only 10,000 feet, but it was enough to accommodate Luo Fu. Luo Fan turned to the three-eyed man and said, "If she hadn't taken my star praying mat, it would have been difficult for me to rescue my son so quickly." At this moment, the three-eyed man was less than 10 feet away from Luo Fan. The three-eyed man had already recovered and said coldly, "I didn't think she would dare to hide this from me. If she hadn't done so, the situation would have been the other way around. Damn it. Now that things have come to this, your defeat is certain. Can you tell me where you came from?" Luo Fan said lightly. "Defeat is certain? I don't think so," the three-eyed man said with a smile. As he spoke, over 1,000 streams of energy tore through space and appeared around everyone. They formed an extremely mysterious formation that contained an extremely strange and profound secret. Under this formation, an invisible force shrouded from all directions. In an instant, the void was destroyed, and it was oppressing Luo Fan's mind and body. "Although my domain has been broken, I still have 1,000 subordinate. Their combined strength is enough to destroy you. If you can survive their attacks, I will tell you where I came from," the three-eyed man said lightly. At this moment, his 3 eyes were shining with a cold, greedy light. That gaze was like a tiger looking at a rabbit. It was the gaze of a tiger looking at its prey. Luo Fan stood there quietly, and a strange smile appeared on his face. 1,000 subordinates. This may seem like a lot, but the difference of one level is like the difference between heaven and earth. What's the use of numbers? Luo Fan said lightly. With that, he raised his hand and shook it. The billions of stars in the void shot out beams of starlight. They covered the sky and the earth, and directly bombarded the 1,000 subordinates of the three-eyed man. "How can it be so simple? Activate the formation!" the three-eyed man shouted. Following his shout, the 1,000+ subordinates of the three-eyed man abruptly shot out waves of incomparably powerful energies of different natures, which interweaved and condensed in midair. Finally, like silk being woven into a cloth, the void was woven into a huge human figure that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It had 3 eyes and 1,000 hands. At the same time, the 1,000 subordinates of the three-eyed man disappeared, without a trace, in a way that even Luo Fan could not detect. They seemed to have blended into the void, seemed to have blended into the huge human figure, and also seemed to have left this space. As soon as this humanoid phantom appeared, a monstrous aura surged out and fiercely pressed down on Luo Fan. When the starlight shot out from every star in the great star formation from all directions hit the back of the huge human figure, the 1,000 hands behind his head suddenly moved. The 1,000 hands behind his head suddenly moved and grabbed at the air, creating a powerful invisible force that suddenly pressed down on the boundless starlight. In an instant, the endless starlight collapsed, turned into stars, and scattered in all directions. A serious expression appeared on Luo Fan's face. The power of this human figure had broken through the barrier between the itinerant immortal realm and the perfected immortal realm. Its power was more than 100 times stronger than the combined power of the 1,000 cultivators who had set up the formation. This power could even be compared to his own body. At this time, Luo Fan was only a magic weapon. Although he had the power of Zhifeng Boy, it was still many times weaker than his own body. In the face of this huge figure, he could no longer use the same attitude as before. "Is this your real body?" Luo Fan said lightly. "You are really knowledgeable," the three-eyed middle-aged man praised. "If that's the case, then I can rest assured." Luo Fan slightly smiled. The huge figure in front of him was the three-eyed middle-aged man's real body, which meant that the three-eyed middle-aged man in front of him was only an incarnation. The biggest possibility was that the three-eyed middle-aged man's real body had not entered the untainted land. Perhaps there was some kind of restriction, or perhaps they would be suppressed when they entered the untainted land. But no matter what, this was good for Luo Fan and the untainted land. The three-eyed middle-aged man was also an extremely intelligent person. Looking at Luo Fan's expression and movements, he knew what Luo Fan was thinking. He smiled coldly and said, "Although my real body can't enter the untainted land now, it won't be long. You don't have to worry too quickly." As he spoke, his body swayed, turned into a gray light, and rushed up. In the blink of an eye, he merged with the huge figure. In an instant, the light in the giant's 3 eyes became extremely lively. The movements of the 1,000 arms behind his head also became extremely nimble as they waved about. "Comfortable. I have stayed in that small body for more than 100,000 years. Now I can finally relive the feeling of my real body again. It's really great," the giant said. Chapter 290. The Promise of 10 Million Years. Realm of Tautya. The formation set up by the sturdy three-eyed man's 1,000 subordinates could actually condense a body that was similar to his own body. Moreover, he could attach his will to the body, turning it into a body that was similar to his own. Although this body was not his true body, it was the combined power of over 1,000 innate gods who had attained Tao. Thus, the power it could unleash was definitely 100 times, or even 1,000 times stronger than his original three-eyed middle-aged man's body. Luo Fan calmly looked at the huge 1,000-hand giant. His face was very calm. He didn't have an expression of, as expected, as if everything was within his grasp, nor did he show a trace of panic or loss. "Then let me see just how strong you really are. I hope you don't disappoint me." He raised his head and said indifferently. As he spoke, his mind changed. His body, which was less than 10 feet tall, suddenly expanded, and instantly turned into a sturdy giant with a body of 10,000 feet. It seemed that he was as tall as the giant with 1,000 hands in front of him. It could be said that there was not much difference except for the 1,000 hands behind his head. The world of Dharma form had appeared many times in the legends, so Luo Fan naturally knew of its existence. The Tao fruit of the Way scripture also had this kind of divine power. At this time, in the star formation formed by the star cattail cushion, it was a cloned celestial device, not a flesh fetus. Its endurance was much stronger than his physical body, and it could pour its power into it without any worries. Therefore, after the world of Dharma form was used, Luo Fan used the star cattail cushion to control the infinite starlight to pour into it, which instantly increased the power of the clone celestial device by more than 10,000 times. The nature of this power was too heterogeneous and not pure enough. It was far inferior to the earthly immortal Tao fruit or the perfected immortal realm. However, for Luo Fan, who had reached the realm of Tai Tao fruit, the power that this clone magic treasure could display was definitely not inferior to that of a perfected immortal realm cultivator. Is this the legendary world of Dharma form? Looks like this battle won't be too boring. The giant laughed and shook his body. The great star formation shook, and ripples visible to the naked eye spread out from the body of the thousand-armed giant. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly. He raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. Boundless starlight gathered in the void and rubbed against each other in an extremely profound way. It was ceaselessly purified and finally condensed into a ball of lightning that was formed from the essence of countless killing and cold stars. This ball of lightning was over 10,000 feet in size, and it seemed to be extremely condensed and pure. In fact, it had even undergone some sort of inconceivable and profound transformation. In the center of this ball of lightning, there seemed to be a lightning dragon that ruled over all the lightning in the world. The thunder dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws, and a mysterious dragon roar came from the ball of lightning. A pressure that could suppress the heavens and earth and dominate the world came crashing down, pressing down on the thousand-armed giant. This is the first time I've used this heavenly dragon thunder god supreme art, since I created it. I don't know how powerful it is. Fellow Taoist, can you give me some pointers? Luo Fan said calmly. As he said this, he raised his hand. The ball of lightning unfolded in midair. The thunder dragon suddenly extended its body, and with a sway of its body, it broke through the restraints of the ball of lightning. It grabbed everywhere in the void, and the countless stars in the endless starry sky all trembled and spat out countless bolts of lightning. They directly broke through the boundless void for billions of miles, and in the blink of an eye, they broke through space-time and arrived around the thousand-armed giant. They condensed into a net of lightning that fiercely enveloped the thousand-armed giant. This net of lightning had condensed to a certain limit, and it seemed to have become solid. The moment it enveloped the thousand-armed giant, an incomparably powerful space-time pressure instantly acted on the thousand-armed giant, freezing the space-time around it. Crack, 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 strange sounds came from the thousand-armed giant. The thousand-armed giant seemed to be unable to withstand the space-time pressure, and was about to collapse. At this moment, the thousand-armed giant's head shook. In the center of the thousand hands behind its head, the arm above its head suddenly expanded, and with a stretch it instantly grew more than 100 times. A giant hand that was hundreds of thousands of feet long, like a pillar that could prop up the heavens, directly grabbed at the net of lightning that came crashing down on it from all directions. This giant hand's grasp was extremely mysterious. This grasp contained some kind of mysteries of the world that Luo Fan didn't understand, and from an inconceivable angle, it grabbed at the lightning net that not even Luo Fan had discovered a weakness. Kacha crack, the void distorted violently, and the lightning net twisted violently under the great power of the giant hand. It seemed that no matter which direction it came from, no matter how it changed the way it enveloped the giant, it couldn't break through the obstruction of the giant hand and envelop it. Luo Fan wasn't anxious. His expression didn't change at all, and his heart didn't waver. The lightning dragon he condensed let out a roar towards the sky and twisted in midair. The dragon claw condensed from lightning grabbed at the void, as if there was some kind of invisible existence in the void. It was incomparably stable, but also contained endless power and endless mysteries of the world. In the blink of an eye, it crossed tens of thousands of feet, caught up to the lightning net, and faced the giant hand. The lightning dragon's dragon claw danced in the void, and the giant lightning net suddenly wrapped around it. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a mysterious and inconceivable thundercloud. The thundercloud wrapped around the lightning dragon, causing almost 90% of the lightning dragon's body to be wrapped in the thundercloud. Only its head and tail could be seen, and its power increased by more than 100 times. It was extremely mysterious. At the same time, the space-time pressure acting on the giant's body increased by more than 100 times. Under this space-time pressure, the giant's giant hand trembled slightly, and its momentum was slightly hindered. And it was precisely this slight hindrance that allowed the lightning dragon to seize this fleeting opportunity. It rushed forward, wrapped around the giant's 1,000 arms, and completely wrapped around the giant's entire body. Under the envelopment of the thundercloud, endless power erupted. Space-time distorted and even shattered. Traces of spatial cracks spread out from the thundercloud. The thundercloud shone brightly and smoke filled the air. The violent shockwave of the explosion almost destroyed the star formation formed by the star mat. Powerful indeed, but it's still not enough to destroy me. Open. The three-eyed middle-aged man's somewhat pained voice suddenly came from the center of the explosion, the smoke and the lightning. Along with this voice, a power that could destroy the heavens and earth erupted from the center of the explosion. Under this power, the densely packed spatial fragments were like bombs that had been detonated, spewing out in all directions. At the place where the spatial fragments disappeared, a large crystal palace could be seen. This was clearly the scene within the water elemental domain. Luo Fan was not surprised by the 1,000-armed giant's performance. He raised his hand and pressed down, and the spatial fragments that shot out from the center of the explosion in all directions instantly calmed down. The smoke, light, and shock waves also subsided in the blink of an eye, thus revealing the scene in the center. The 1,000-armed giant's figure was a little hunched, and the 1,000 arms behind its head had been broken. A total of 999 arms were broken, and only the largest arm on top of its head was waving randomly. This thunder spell is really powerful, worthy of being created by the first person in the untainted land. The middle-aged giant's face was full of satisfaction as he praised. Then, with a shake of his head, endless power was generated out of thin air. The 999 broken arms quickly regrew, and in the blink of an eye, they were restored to their original state, as if they had never been broken. Even its expression had recovered, and no one could tell that it had consumed any energy. It turns out that it also has a characteristic similar to the immortal body. It seems that your original body in your world has the great fortune of heaven and earth. Luo Fan's expression was calm, as if he was not surprised by the mysterious magic power displayed by the giant. The 1,000-armed giant laughed and said, "You can say that about the great fortune of heaven and earth. Since my race devoured all the races in the world, who else can the great fortune of heaven and earth rely on besides us? Ha ha! It's a pity that such a powerful race actually took the wrong path." Luo Fan sighed. Suddenly, he felt that he had lost all interest. He raised his hand and clapped. A seal that was tens of millions of feet long appeared in the void out of thin air. 3 extremely complicated and mysterious words were engraved on the front of the seal: Ultimate Square Seal. After the seal appeared, an extremely powerful locking force appeared out of thin air and acted on the 1,000-armed giant. The 1,000-armed giant didn't care at first. It slightly waved the 1,000 arms behind its head, producing a formless and intangible power that contained some kind of profound great Tao power that blasted towards the invisible lock-on power. However, this mysterious force that had locked onto him did not budge at all. It was as if the power that contained the mysteries of great Tao had blown past it like a gentle breeze. It was not affected in the slightest. Seeing this, the 1,000-armed giant finally felt that something was wrong, and its expression changed drastically. It suddenly raised its head and looked up. At the same time, the third eye on its forehead shot out an extremely condensed gray light that pierced through the sky like a sharp arrow. This gray light pierced straight up, stabbing into the ultimate square seal, that was tens of millions of feet long. This stab was like a noodle stabbing into cowhide. It was unable to affect the ultimate square seal in the slightest. Instead, the light suddenly collapsed due to this blocking force. It turned into countless thin and dense gray dots that scattered in all directions. In the end, it was devoured by the boundless starry sky and disappeared without a trace. Impossible! How can there be such a powerful artifact in this world? And it seems to have intelligence. What is this thing? The thousand-armed giant suddenly let out an extremely loud roar, as if it had discovered something extremely inconceivable. This ultimate square seal is a Dharma treasure that I've refined. Naturally, it has intelligence. How can it be so easily seen through and destroyed by you? Luo Fan said flatly. As he spoke, his mind moved slightly. The ultimate square seal that hung high in the sky suddenly descended. In an instant, it crossed a distance of tens of millions of feet and pressed down on the thousand-armed giant's head. A crazed look appeared in the thousand-armed giant's eyes. The 1,000 arms on the back of its head suddenly slammed upward, and it used all the power in its body, all the nomological laws it controlled, and all the techniques it knew to block the ultimate square seal. However, the ultimate square seal was refined by Luo Fan. It was a Dharma treasure that was specialized in attacking. It was extremely hard and unimaginably powerful. Under the control of Luo Fan's mind, it almost reached the level of an earthly immortal or a golden immortal. How could this thousand-armed giant, which had barely reached the level of a true immortal, withstand it? In an instant, the thousand-armed giant's 1,000 arms collapsed like a pile of flour. After that, it was the head, neck, and torso. As the thousand-armed giant's body continued to crumble, a series of miserable cries rang out from the void. Even more shattered bodies appeared out of thin air. By the time the thousand-armed giant's foot had completely collapsed, the number of bodies that had been thrown out of the void had increased to over 1,000. They were the 1,000 subordinates of the three-eyed middle-aged man who had set up the formation. Looking at the bodies that were constantly being thrown out of the void, Luo Fan's face showed a look of regret. So many Khanate gods. If they could walk the right path, how powerful would they be? Although it was a pity, there was nothing Luo Fan could do. Under the crushing attack of the ultimate square seal, the spirit and life force of the 1,000 Khanate gods had long since been wiped out. Even though Luo Fan was now qualified to seek the Tai Dao fruit, he could not help them recover. You're not dead yet, and you can even escape with the help of the third eye. You're really not simple. Luo Fan frowned and raised his hand to grab somewhere in the void hundreds of millions of miles away. In the void, a very strange eyeball moved through the void and appeared in front of Luo Fan out of thin air. Ha ha! I didn't expect that I would lose so miserably, but this result is not bad. At least I know that there is a magic treasure with intelligence in this untainted world. It can be said that I have made a great contribution. I don't think I will be punished when I go back, and I might even be rewarded. I really have to thank you, my friend. The eyeball sent out such a proud thought. An ominous premonition flashed in Luo Fan's mind. He raised his hand to cover the eyeball. However, in an instant the eyeball shrank and exploded. It instantly turned into powder and disappeared without a trace. Since you've defeated me, then I'll tell you. My name is Apollo. Dragon? Tao Tai from the Tao Tai realm. Remember it well. We'll meet again in thousands of years. Ha ha. An extremely strong thought came from the void and was instantly received by Luo Fan. Luo Fan's heart skipped a beat. Thoughts flashed in his mind, and he used endless power to fuse with the great Tao in the unseen world. With the help of the deduction method, he tried to find Apollo, Dragon, where the Tao Tai was and where the Tao Tai realm was. With the name as a guide, the information that he could obtain was naturally easier than deducing from nothing. However, this was Apollo, Dragon? The Tao Tai was not a creature of the untainted world. Luo Fan used all the power of this doppelganger magic treasure to obtain very little information. It was almost only a few images. It's actually not an extraterritorial world like the free transformation heaven, but another big world similar to the untainted world. Luo Fan thought to himself, feeling that it was quite troublesome. After a while, he raised his hand and waved gently. The boundless starry sky instantly shrank, and instantly turned into an extremely ordinary futon that did not have any mysteries. And the surrounding world also returned to the previous scene of the water elemental realm. Looking up, everything in the entire water elemental realm was displayed in Luo Fan's mind. The water elemental realm was still the same as before. It looked exquisite and gave out an indescribable power. However, there was no vitality in the water elemental realm. What a waste! I actually used such a perfect water elemental realm to build such a flashy but impractical crystal palace. Luo Fan grasped everything in the water elemental realm and could not help but feel that it was a pity. This water elemental realm was a realm, and it was an incomplete small world. The time and space in this small world could completely change according to the thoughts of the person who refined this water elemental realm. In other words, this water elemental realm could completely change the flow of time like the mini-kiliocosm of the Void Wuji Palace. Although it could not be as exaggerated as the flow of time in the untainted world by 365 times, it was still possible to speed up time by dozens of times. It could be said that it was a reckless waste of God's gift to be changed into what it was now. With a thought, Luo Fan took a step forward, crossed a distance of thousands of miles, and came to the center of this water elemental realm, which was the largest and most gorgeous of the many crystal palaces. In the center of this palace there was a misty sphere. From the outside, it seemed to be only 1 foot in diameter, but as long as one stepped into it, one would find that the space inside was almost infinite. Luo Fan had already seen through the structure of this water elemental realm, and stepped into it without hesitation. As the time and space distorted, he seemed to have entered another world. Above, below, left, right, in front of him, behind him, there was nothing but a boundless void, and right in the center of this void, there was a heart-shaped innate water heart, vibrating slightly like a huge heart that was beating. This was the control hub of the whole water elemental realm. It was the place with the most and richest innate water essence in this pool of innate water essence. As long as one imprinted his thoughts on this innate water essence heart, one could refine the whole water elemental realm and become the master of the water elemental realm. The original owner of this water elemental realm was Apollo? Dragon? Tao Tai had disappeared from the untainted world at this time, which was equivalent to his death, and the thoughts imprinted on it naturally dissipated. At this time, the innate water essence heart was already an object without an owner, and the difficulty of refining it was reduced by thousands of times. Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. Luo Fu's figure directly flew out of the inner space of the doppelganger celestial device and appeared directly in front of him. Luo Fu was meditating in the inner space of the doppelganger celestial device to restore his strength and divine soul. Suddenly, he came to a completely strange world. He couldn't help but be slightly shocked. He looked around and found Luo Fan's figure. After seeing Luo Fan, he completely relaxed, straightened up, bowed and said, "I have embarrassed you, Father. Please punish me." Chapter 291. The Great Way of a Different World, Mysterious and Strange Light. Although this water field domain was formed by a huge amount of innate water essence, and because of the accumulation of quantity, it had a qualitative change, and the energy was a little strong. But it was also a simple prototype of the world. If Luo Fu could refine this water field domain, then the mystery of the simple prototype of the whole water field domain would be automatically imprinted in his mind. These mysteries would automatically integrate into his every move as his cultivation realm increased in the future, and naturally become the cornerstone of his progress. From this point of view, This water-field domain was also the foundation of Luo Fu's Tao. Luo Fu listened to Luo Fan's arrangement, and his expression was very calm. But his heart was full of excitement and joy. Although he was the son of Luo Fan, and Luo Fan treated him very well, and almost thought of all the paths for him in the future. But just like all the children in the world, Luo Fu did not feel that Luo Fan treated him differently from others, and even occasionally felt that Luo Fan treated Hong Jun and Guang Pu better than him. At this moment, after he had embarrassed Luo Fan so much, Luo Fan actually did not blame him. Instead, Luo Fan helped him build the foundation for achieving the Tao. Moreover, Luo Fan did not even say a single harsh word to him. Only then did he truly feel how well Luo Fan treated him. He felt how much Luo Fan cared about him. I will work hard to recuperate and refine this innate water essence as soon as possible. In this kind of emotional agitation, Luo Fu bowed and said with his body slightly trembling, "Go ahead. Although this innate water essence heart is an ownerless object and isn't too difficult to refine for us cultivators, that's only true for us cultivators who have attained Tao. For you, if you want to refine this thing, it will take a lot of effort and a lot of time. If you slack off a little, you will not succeed. You must not be half-hearted." Luo Fan saw through Luo Fu's thoughts, and he felt a little warm in his heart. Luo Fu did not feel that these words of Luo Fan were long-winded. Instead, he enjoyed it and bowed in agreement without any reluctance. Luo Fan nodded. With a thought, he raised his hand and shot a mysterious spiritual light towards the innate water elite heart in the center of the void in front of him. The speed of the spiritual light was extremely fast. In an instant, it passed through the boundless void and went straight into the innate water essence that was beating like a huge heart. As the mysterious spiritual light entered, a circle of extremely mysterious ripples spread out from the innate water essence. A speed that almost surpassed the speed of light instantly swept across the entire boundless void. After that, it quickly spread to the entire water element domain. As the mysterious ripples spread out, the entire water element domain, including the void where Luo Fan and Luo Fu were, distorted slightly. After the distortion, the flow of time in the water element domain had accelerated to 100 times faster than the primordial world. The entire process of the change in the flow of time was extremely mysterious and wonderful. Luo Fu's cultivation realm was not high enough, and his current state was extremely weak. However, he could not sense this change at all. He only looked around blankly, as if he had sensed that something had changed around him. However, it was as if nothing had happened. Luo Fan did not want to test Luo Fu. He directly revealed the answer and said, "I have already used the power of the water element domain to speed up the flow of time here to 100 times faster than the primordial world. You have a lot of time to cultivate and refine the innate water essence heart here. You don't have to worry about your family. You can focus on refining it." When Luo Fu heard Luo Fan's words, his heart trembled. Shock appeared in his eyes, and he was even more excited. Previously, Luo Fan had said that the water element domain was the foundation of his Tao. Although he was sure that Luo Fan would not lie to him, he did not have an intuitive feeling after all. Although he was excited, he could still control himself. However, at that moment, when he heard that the water element domain could teleport time and accelerate time to such an extent, he knew how precious and mysterious the water element domain was. Only then did he know how good his father was to him. In this excited mood, his eyes could not help but turn slightly red. Barely holding back his tears, he bowed and said, "Yes, I know." Luo Fan saw the change in Luo Fu's mood at a glance. He knew that there was no need for him to say anything more. Luo Fu would not slack off at all. He nodded and said, "In that case, after refining this water element domain, you can put it into your body and come see me. I'm leaving now." As he spoke, he did not wait for Luo Fu's reply. His figure swayed and disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, he teleported and disappeared in the water element domain. Out of the water element domain, Luo Fan turned into a long rainbow and rushed up. In a short while, he rushed out of the deep pool and floated hundreds of miles above the mirror-like pool water. Looking down at the mirror-like pool water below, his mind flashed with light. Then, he raised his hand and gently waved it in the air, creating a series of extremely mysterious trajectories. These trajectories contained endless mysteries of heaven and earth. If someone with a strong power of comprehension saw these movements of his, he would be able to instantly comprehend all kinds of cultivation methods that led directly to the great Tao, and with these movements of Luo Fan, endless innate vitality in the void quickly gathered below him, and gradually turned into a huge arc-shaped talisman. This talisman was so wide that it directly covered the entire mirror-like pool water. What formed this talisman were incomparably tiny energy threads that were condensed from a huge amount of innate vitality. These energy threads were like spider silk. The talisman was extremely stable and unimaginably complicated. If an ordinary cultivator who had not attained the great Tao saw this arc-shaped talisman, his mind would be shaken by the impact of the overly complicated mysteries, and his head would be dizzy. He might even lose consciousness. From this, one could see how mysterious this arc-shaped talisman was. After the arc-shaped talisman was formed, Luo Fan raised his hand and pressed it down gently. An invisible force was generated out of thin air and directly acted on the arc-shaped talisman, causing it to sink instantly. In the blink of an eye, it sank hundreds of miles, directly into the huge pool water below. The moment the arc-shaped talisman came into contact with the pool water, the endless innate water essence in the pool water suddenly fluctuated violently. In an instant, tens of millions of tons of innate water essence combined with the arc-shaped talisman, producing some kind of incredible change. As the light flickered, the entire pool water turned into a grassland. The cold air that was enough to freeze water from hundreds of miles away disappeared without a trace, and the surrounding environment was as if the pool water did not exist at all. A breeze blew, and the grassland swayed with the wind, producing circles of ripples, like the waves of the sea. Luo Fan gently stepped on the ground, and his figure directly sank hundreds of miles, stepping on the surface of the grassland. It felt like solid ground, no different from a real grassland. Even the smell of the grass, the aura of the earth essence, and the vitality were the same. In this way, no one can detect the existence of the water domain below. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. After thinking about it, his figure shook, and he turned into a long rainbow, shooting towards the northwest, leaving an afterimage in the air that was tens of thousands of feet long. Just now, what Luo Fan had set up was a ceiling formation combined with an illusory formation. This formation had no name, and even its existence was created by Luo Fan casually. Before Luo Fan used it, this formation did not exist. The Tao Fruit Scripture was a scripture that summarized all the magical powers that Luo Fan possessed, and it was a kind of outline. In other words, so long as one learned this scripture, then it was equivalent to obtaining the essence of the Tao Fruit Tao. Then, any magical technique, any magical power could be created at will. Earlier, Luo Fan had utilized the principles of the illusory Tao volume, formation Tao volume, and talisman volume of the Tao Fruits Tao Scripture and combined it with the surrounding environment of the pool of water to casually create an arc-shaped talisman that was most suitable for the environment of the pool of water and was able to conceal the pool of water the best. The power of the arc-shaped talisman created by this formation wasn't very strong, but it was able to create an almost realistic illusion, and it could completely conceal the thing that Luo Fan wanted to conceal. Being able to set up such a formation meant that Luo Fan's mastery of the Tao Fruit Scripture had reached a state that was close to the quintessence, and no one in the world could compare to him. At this moment, although Luo Fan was only a doppelganger artifact, with the support of the Absolute Square Seal, His speed was extremely fast. For him, the distance of tens of billions of miles was crossed in less than half a day. After half a day, Luo Fan's clone magic weapon had already arrived in front of Buzhou Mountain with the enhancement of the square seal. His figure descended and turned back into Luo Fan's figure, arriving outside the space-time illusion. As the clone magic weapon landed, countless lights and shadows flashed in the eyes of Luo Fan's real body inside the infinite void palace. In an instant, he had already received all the thoughts in the clone magic weapon, and he completely understood the whole process of the battle just now. It seems that the power of this clone magic weapon is still too weak. Forget it, I'll leave Square Boy there. Anyway, Square Boy won't be of much use here. Such thoughts flashed in Luo Fan's mind. With this thought, the square seal that had fused with the clone magic weapon shook slightly, and a change occurred. It became more closely integrated with the clone magic weapon. The doppelganger celestial device instantly understood the main body's thoughts. It calmly sat down with its legs crossed and began to rethink the various magic arts obtained from those innate gods to supplement its own Tao fruit of the way scripture. In the infinite void, Luo Fan's real body was still drawing endless chaotic yuan qi from the infinite void world and injecting it into his body. At this time, his mind and magic power had not been completely replenished, and they were still very empty. Although the earthly immortal's Tao fruit in his lower abdomen was no longer like an empty shell, the power it could recover was still quite limited. Luo Fan sat cross-legged in the void, and there were 129,600 chaotic yuan qi flows around him like flood dragons. Countless thoughts flashed in his mind. His doppelganger artifact and Apollo's dragon? The entire battle process of Taotai was constantly broken down in his mind, constantly rewinding, and constantly replaying. Every scene, every change of power. Apollo? Dragon? Every movement of Taotai and the changes in the environment caused by it were replayed in his mind at a speed that was thousands of times slower. Through the calculation of the doppelganger magical treasure, Luo Fan still did not know where the realm of Taotai was and where he should go to find it. However, it was obvious that it was another world, a world that was equal to the untainted land, a world that was created by an existence similar to Pangu. That world was so advanced and vast, and the great way of heaven and earth in it must be extremely mysterious. Even if it could not be compared to the great way of heaven and earth in the untainted land, it would not be far behind. Apollo? Dragon? All the divine sense and martial arts of Taotai were cultivated in that world. The martial arts and formations he used naturally contained the great way of heaven and earth. At that time, with Apollo? Dragon? Luo Fan, who was fighting with Taotai, was just a clone magic weapon. Although it had Luo Fan's consciousness attached to it, its power of understanding was far less than that of the real Luo Fan. Therefore, at that time, it could not learn from Apollo? Dragon? What could it learn from Taotai's martial arts and formations? But now, the situation was different. Although Luo Fan's main body was in a very bad state, his perception was not damaged in the slightest. He could easily comprehend the mysteries that the clone magical tools could not comprehend, and he could easily see through the origin that the clone magical tools could not see through. Time passed quickly while Luo Fan was in the process of enlightenment and cultivation. 1,000 years in the untainted land passed in the blink of an eye. This 1,000 years was 2,000 years for the medium-class world, and 10,000 years for the innate gods in the space-time illusion. For Luo Fu, who was refining the innate water elite heart in the water element field, it was 100,000 years. On this day, the liquefied chaotic primordial qi on the top of Buzhou Mountain suddenly tumbled violently. This kind of tumbling was the most violent tumbling since ancient times, since the untainted land was created by Pangu. This kind of tumbling was like a level 12 storm suddenly appearing on the calm sea, making the whole top of Buzhou Mountain extremely violent and shocking. Ka. long, shio, walla, woo. Countless wonderful and mysterious sounds kept bursting out in the tumbling chaotic primordial chi, entangling and shaking in the void and spreading far away. Like the sound of the invisible Great Way, it caused infinite energy changes in the void and produced countless electric lights and rainbow lights. The tumbling chaotic primordial chi even rushed out of the strong pressure on the top of Buzhou Mountain and flowed down the mountain of Buzhou Mountain. It looked like a volcanic eruption. When the pouring chaotic primordial chi was left 1,000 miles below the top of Buzhou Mountain, it gradually vaporized due to the weakening of the pressure and turned into chaotic primordial chi that increased in volume by 1,000 times. Like a large dark cloud, it rolled down under the impact of the pouring chaotic primordial chi and rushed for more than 10,000 miles before completely disappearing. From afar, the whole of Buzhou Mountain looked like it was wearing a black straw hat. It was so huge that it was unimaginable. Amidst the tumbling, a huge whirlpool that almost affected the whole top of Buzhou Mountain gradually formed. The whirlpool breathed in and out, as if there was an indescribable mysterious existence being nurtured in it. It also seemed like some unbelievably powerful existence was breathing and leaping in it. Just as the throbbing and drumming reached a certain limit, a long whistle that was initially almost undetectable rang out, growing louder and louder. This long whistle lasted for a full 2 hours. After 2 hours, it resounded throughout the world and even covered the violent sounds produced by the liquefied chaotic primordial chi ocean. Then, an invisible tremor suddenly erupted. Along with the shaking, a cracking sound that sounded like the splitting of the heavens and the earth erupted from the top of Mount Buzhou. Following the sound, the huge whirlpool that affected the entire liquefied chaotic primordial chi ocean on the top of Buzhou Mountain suddenly collapsed. The collapse of the whirlpool caused the liquefied chaotic primordial chi ocean on the top of Buzhou Mountain to be like a basin of water that had been smashed into by a rock the size of a basin. In an instant, almost all the liquefied chaotic primordial chi was forced out of the top of Buzhou Mountain and poured down from all directions on Buzhou Mountain. This huge amount of liquefied chaotic primordial chi poured down for more than 50,000 miles. It only completely vaporized when it reached the mountainside of Buzhou Mountain, turning into thick chaotic primordial chi that rose again. It looked like the entire Buzhou Mountain was like a huge mushroom cloud. At this moment, the long whistle that resounded through the world became clearer and clearer. A figure soared into the sky and charged into the endless starry sky above. After the figure soared into the endless starry sky, an extremely dazzling grayish-brown light suddenly burst out. The light's penetrative power was unimaginably strong. It penetrated through the thick layers of strong winds, lightning and fire, penetrated through the void for 90,000 miles, and directly reached the land within a radius of 10 million miles around Buzhou Mountain. It was as if there was an additional grayish-brown sun in the land within a radius of 10 million miles. The grayish-brown light contained some kind of mysterious and indescribable life force, as well as some profound and unfathomable secrets of the world. Under the cover of the light, the land within a radius of 10 million miles underwent some kind of unbelievable change. All sorts of innate essences rapidly transformed and evolved at the spots that contained them. In the blink of an eye, they turned into all kinds of indescribable living beings. And in the spots where there were already living beings, their spiritual intelligence grew rapidly. The living creatures without spiritual consciousness developed spiritual consciousness, and the spiritual consciousness of the living creatures that had developed spiritual consciousness quickly became complete. The grayish-brown light only lasted for less than a quarter of an hour. However, it was this quarter of an hour that turned the land within a radius of 10 million miles around Buzhou Mountain into a holy land. The originally barren land became full of life. It no longer looked like the primordial world when the world was first created. Instead, it looked like the primordial world where countless living beings lived and fought after the primordial world was created. After the grayish-brown light faded, The long whistle that resounded through the world also stopped. The figure's true appearance was revealed. Chapter 292. Ape thunder breaks the innate world in the depths of the endless starry sky. In the void of darkness, Luo Fan stood in the void. His left and right eyes shot out two beams of light, one gold and one silver, towards a certain place in the endless starry sky. During the 2,000 years in the dimensional space of the limitless palace, Luo Fan had already completely replenished the power of his magic power, which had almost completely exhausted his mind. Moreover, he even used the doppelganger celestial device and Apollo dragon. During the battle, Tao Tai revealed his understanding of the mysteries of the great Tao of another world. His cultivation had almost improved by leaps and bounds. Compared to more than 2,000 years ago, he had improved by a whole level. At this moment, although he still could not prove the mysterious Tai Dao fruit that he still could not understand and only knew of a name, he was already a big step closer to that step. If it was said that he only possessed the initial qualifications to seek the primordial Dao fruit 2,000 years ago, then at this moment, he had already stepped through the threshold of seeking the primordial Dao fruit. It was even to the extent that he only lacked that final step that was like crossing a fine line. He only lacked that final mysterious fortuitous encounter before he could truly attain the primordial Dao fruit, obtain inconceivable divine abilities, and possess might that he could not even imagine now. The reason why he could make such progress was naturally not because the great Tao of another world was more profound than the great Tao of the untainted world. In fact, Apollo, dragon, compared to the great Tao of the untainted world, the mysteries of the great Tao of the untainted world displayed by Tao Tai did not have much of an advantage. In fact, it was much simpler. However, the mysteries that he had achieved were the mysteries of another world, another system of the world, and the truth of the great Tao. As the saying goes, stones from other mountains can be used to improve jade. After tens of thousands of years of cultivation, Luo Fan had almost reached the limit of the mysteries of the world and the mysteries of the great Tao that he could comprehend in the untainted world. Naturally, he would still be able to improve, but that would require him to spend a long period of time, and he would need to expend boundless energy in order to achieve that. Apollo? Dragon? The appearance of the Tao Tai's great Tao was like a drop of water falling into a pot of boiling oil. It caused the pot of oil, which had been like stagnant water, to react violently. It completely stimulated the vitality of the mysteries of the primordial world that Luo Fan had comprehended for tens of thousands of years. Because of this, it allowed him to have an even deeper understanding of the profundities of the world and the truths of the Grand Tao. His cultivation naturally improved greatly because of this. Previously, when he charged into the boundless starry sky, the profound light that shone from his body was the manifestation of all the mysteries of the world that he had comprehended in his life, the ultimate truths of the great Tao. Although it was only a ray of light, however, it contained an infinite amount of information. In the previous quarter of an hour, the area that was shrouded by this mysterious light was equivalent to Luo Fan's mind, and his divine soul was connected. It was equivalent to comprehending the limitless power of the primordial world with Luo Fan. Just a little bit of it would be enough to topple the mountains and overturn the seas, and the supreme great Tao that could fly through the sky and burrow into the earth. That was why there was such a mysterious scene that caused such a huge change in the area of Buzhou Mountain. Although his cultivation had made such a huge improvement, Luo Fan was not too surprised. At this moment, there was not much joy on his face. Instead, he frowned. With the understanding of the great Tao of the different world, he naturally had a hazy understanding of the realm of Taodai. Through the unbelievable power of the golden eyes of the great sun and the silver eyes of the bright moon, he could vaguely see that in the boundless chaos outside the primordial world, which was the end of the boundless starry sky, there were countless worlds. These worlds were almost all affected by the primordial world. They were small worlds that depended on the primordial world. They existed when the primordial world existed, and when it was destroyed along with it. However, among these countless worlds, in the furthest place, almost at the end of his sight, there was a huge world that was similar to the primordial world. It was also a huge world that ruled over countless worlds. That was Apollo? Dragon? The realm of Tautai where the Tautai was born. It was the source of the great Tao of the different world that Luo Fan had comprehended. Seeing the realm of Tautai vaguely, Luo Fan's mind was filled with awe. The realm of Tautai was more than 1,000,000,000 times stronger than the other worlds like Free Transformation Heaven and Supreme Heart Rotating Heaven. Moreover, it seemed to emit endless greed and malice at all times. Seeing such a world, he thought of Apollo? Dragon? How could Luo Fan be happy when the Tautai said that they would meet again in 10,000,000 years? Fine, I'll deal with it when it comes. After 10,000,000 years, I'll definitely attain the Tai Dao fruit. At that time, I don't know how strong I'll be. There's no need to worry about the realm of Taotia's attack in the future. After a long time, such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind, and he could not help but feel enlightened. His expression also became indifferent. Suddenly, his heart moved slightly, and he looked into the depths of the endless starry sky, in the direction of the primordial world. There was a seemingly weak but unbelievably mysterious aura that shot up into the sky. After sensing it carefully, he knew that this aura was a heaven-defying aura that was released when a postnatal creature broke through the innate door and began to return from the postnatal to the innate realm. Could it be Bao-Er? No, it's impossible. Although Bao-Er's cultivation realm has improved extremely fast, he still has a long way to go to break through. The person who broke through the innate door can't be him, Luo Fan thought to himself. With that thought in mind, he still took a step forward, and almost without any smoke or fire aura, he crossed an infinite distance and rushed into the primordial world from a mysterious location, arriving at the top of Buzhou Mountain. There, endless chaotic vital energy began to gather from all over Buzhou Mountain, gradually accumulating at the top. Then, under the pressure of the primordial world above, it slowly liquefied and continued to gather, gradually restoring the appearance of the liquefied chaotic vital energy. In the short period of time that Luo Fan left, the liquefied chaotic vital energy had accumulated a lot, directly covering the entire topography of the top of Buzhou Mountain. So, it's Yuan Lei. I didn't expect his comprehension to be so high. He was able to break through the innate realm just by relying on the fusion of my mind, will, and divine soul. In comparison, Bao-Er's comprehension is a little worse. Luo Fan sighed in his heart. He took a step forward and arrived at the Seeker Cave. There was a 10,000 feet tall azure ape roaring at the sky inside the Seeker Cave. The Seeker Cave had its own mysteries. It could even contain materials the size of a hill, so it was naturally no problem for a 10,000 feet tall azure ape. The azure ape's aura was changing rapidly, and an indescribable aura was being emitted from its body. This aura was extremely mysterious and incredible. It kept moving closer to the source of the aura emitted by all the innate gods, which was also the mysterious innate chi that existed in the unseen world. Luo Fan's eyes flashed, and he saw through all the changes in the azure ape's body in the blink of an eye. At this moment, there was an additional divine fire in the mud ball between the azure ape's eyebrows. This divine fire was different from Luo Fu's and Luo Chunyang's divine fires. There was a very strange pattern at the core of this divine fire. Every single line of this pattern seemed to contain boundless mysteries of heaven and earth. It was profound to an unimaginable level, as if it was swallowing and spitting out some kind of inconceivable aura, increasing some kind of power and transforming its essence. Within the azure ape's body, there were lines condensing in the power. They outlined complex and mysterious embryonic patterns on his body. They were also swallowing some kind of incredible aura, causing some kind of mysterious change to occur. This azure ape was naturally ape-lay. The pattern retrospective technique that he cultivated was very mysterious. In terms of realm, it was not inferior to Luo Fu's origin sculpting spirit technique or Luo Chunyang's 9 heaven sun transformation technique. It also contained Luo Fan's understanding of the pattern Great Tao. The cultivation of this cultivation method was to lay the foundation for the realm of the undying body of the grand Tao of pattern patterns. Every improvement of this cultivation method would bring one closer to the final realm. At this moment, in the divine fire realm, the patterns in his body were essential to the final formation of the immortal body. It was also the foundation of the cultivation of the immortal body. Looking carefully at Ape-Lay's body, Luo Fan sighed in his heart. Luo Fan could be regarded as the first person in the untainted land in terms of cultivation realm. His knowledge was not comparable to any other innate gods. Just now, he could see that Ape-Lay had taken a wrong turn. He was too impatient. These patterns in his power and in his divine flame seemed profound and seemed to contain endless mysteries, but the foundation was not solid, and there were many flaws in them. It was obvious that they were forcibly pushed up by Luo Fan's comprehension. The lightning ape didn't even understand how they were produced or what their meaning was. He was just drawing a picture with a ladle, and couldn't understand the true meaning at all. At this moment, Ape-Lay seemed to have broken through the innate door and stepped on the path of nature reversion. But because of his weak foundation, his future progress would be hundreds or even thousands of times slower than normal. Originally, he only needed to stay in the nature reversion realm for a few yuanhui. Now, he might need dozens or even hundreds of yuanhui to finally break through this realm and really step into the tribulation crossing realm to seek the immortal way that could be reborn from a drop of blood. What a pity! Luo Fan sighed. If it was only a few yuanhui, Luo Fan could still rely on the minor Kiliacosm's ability to move time to allow him to complete the transformation as soon as possible. But for tens of yuanhui, or even hundreds of yuanhui, Luo Fan was powerless. It was not that there was not enough time, but that the small Kiliacosm was not so big. Ape-Lay absolutely could not stay in it for so long. At this time, Ape-Lay, who was roaring at the sky, finally noticed the arrival of Luo Fan. His body shook and instantly shrank 1,000 times to 10 feet. He bowed to Luo Fan and said, "Greetings, Uncle Luo. Thanks to Uncle Luo, I have finally made a breakthrough." Luo Fan nodded and said, "Well done. Although you are a little impatient, it is rare. You can enter the small Kiliacosm and cultivate in seclusion for 1,000 years to slightly stabilize your realm." At this time, Ape-Lay was no longer the child who was ignorant of the world. After training in the small Kiliacosm for such a long time, he was already well versed in the ways of the world. Naturally, he heard the hidden meaning of Luo Fan's words. He could not help but be a little embarrassed and said, "I know that such a breakthrough is too hasty, and some of my foundation is not solid. But I can't resist the temptation to break open the Khanate door. I am really ashamed. Since you mentioned it, I will explain it to you." Luo Fan sighed and said, "The road of cultivation focuses on the cultivation of the mind. The realm of magic power is only secondary. The most important thing is the cultivation and the Taoist heart. If you only have the realm of magic power without the cultivation, and the Taoist heart is not strong, even if you cultivate infinite magical powers and have infinite magic power in the future, you will only be cannon fodder. If your cultivation is deep and your Taoist heart is strong, your magic power and realm will naturally come. This time you can't resist the temptation, and there will be a way to make up for it in the future. But the road of cultivation is almost full of goods. In the future, if you can't resist the temptation and deviate from your goal, I am afraid it will be difficult to clean up in the future, and you will cast a lifetime of regret. I have a close relationship with your parents, so I just said these words to you. If you agree, you can think about it. If you don't want to listen, just pretend that you have never heard it." Although Ape-lay was a little ashamed at first, he was more complacent and complacent. He felt proud of himself for being able to seize such a fleeting opportunity to open the khanate door. Now that he heard Luo Fan's heartfelt words, he could not help but blush, and finally knew what a big mistake he had made. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and said, "I know I am wrong. Thank you for your teachings, Uncle Luo." "You are worth teaching." Luo Fan saw that Ape-lay's expression was not the slightest bit artificial, and it was purely from the heart, so he could not help but secretly nod. He raised his hand and gently waved, and an invisible force appeared out of thin air, directly lifting Ape-lay up. At the same time, he said, "It is not too late for you to understand this now. Take advantage of this opportunity to build a solid foundation. You can purify your mind and re-establish your Taoist heart. Maybe you can gain a blessing in disguise." Ape-lay received the advice and bowed to bid farewell to Luo Fan. He turned around and touched the authority given to him by Luo Fan. He opened a door to the spirit space inside the Wuji Palace, and directly stepped into it. He had followed Luo Fan's previous advice and entered the spirit space to consolidate his foundation. Luo Fan smiled slightly. Anyone would make mistakes, but it was a rare quality to be able to modestly correct after making a mistake and not be stubborn. With this quality, he had the qualification to move towards success. With a thought, he lifted his foot and used a kind of magical power similar to so close, yet worlds apart, and almost without any smoke or fire. He crossed the distance of 100,000 miles and arrived in front of the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain. Before this breakthrough, he could only use this magical power to move 1/10 of the distance at most, and it was absolutely impossible for him to do it so naturally and without the slightest smoke or fire. From this, it could be seen that Luo Fan had made great progress this time. When he arrived here, with a thought, everything that the doppelganger celestial device had experienced in the past 1,000 years and everything that it had deduced flashed in his mind. In the blink of an eye, he knew the development and changes in the space-time illusion in the past 1,000 years. In the past 1,000 years, the space-time illusion had added more than 3,000 innate gods. The speed of the increase was indeed much faster than before, but this was natural. Of course, the news spread faster and faster. Through the communication with these innate gods, Luo Fan's doppelganger magic treasure had increased the foundation of the Tao fruit and the Great Way scripture, and there were more than 100 scriptures, which were more than twice as many as before. It seems that the size of the space-time illusion is not enough. Fortunately, I have some understanding of the illusion doctrine, so I can refine this illusion, Luo Fan thought. With a thought, he took a step forward and arrived 1,000 miles above the space-time illusion. Looking down, the entire space-time illusion structure, the way the power flowed, and all the details were revealed in his eyes. In the past, it seemed to be perfect, and it was almost impossible to modify. However, at this moment, it seemed to be full of flaws, and there was endless room for improvement. With a thought, he raised his hand and slapped down. The entire space-time illusion shook, and the thick fog that shrouded the valley instantly disappeared, revealing the true body of the illusion. As he raised his hand and waved it gently, incredibly thin threads suddenly appeared around the illusion as if they were borne by the world itself. They wrapped around the energy threads that formed the illusion, and as they flashed and trembled, they fused with the energy threads, twisted, or transformed into one with the energy threads. His movements were ordinary, and there was no profoundness in them at all. However, the effect of this movement was 100 times greater than when he had laid the arc-shaped talisman 1,000 years ago. The extremely fine silk threads combined with the entire space-time illusion, instantly making the formation of the space-time illusion more complicated by more than 10 times. As the formation became more complicated, there was endless power in heaven and earth that quickly gathered here. It crazily poured into the formation. In the space-time illusion, the void was slightly distorted, and suddenly increased by more than 100 times. The distance between the heavens and the earth became extremely wide. When they arrived at this place, they saw a boundless land spread out under their feet in all directions. The sky was incomparably deep, and it even reflected the endless starry sky. There were endless star essence descending from the sky, enveloping the entire illusory realm. Suddenly, there seemed to be a feeling of coming to the primitive world. Guangpu, who was cultivating in a valley in the space-time illusion, immediately sensed the change of the entire space-time illusion. She opened her eyes and was delighted. This change, it must be Master's real body. Such a thought flashed in her mind. Then, she stood up, lifted a step, and walked to the next room. At this moment, Luo Chunyang was here with his eyes closed. Guo was sleeping quietly in the arms of a female version of the yellow-turbaned strongman. The summoning tactics of strongman was not too complicated. In addition, it was comprehended by Luo Fan from Guangpu's real body, and he had already passed it to Guangpu. Naturally, Guangpu knew this method. Although she and Luo Chunyang loved Guo very much, they had their own cultivation, after all, and could not spend all their time on Guo. Therefore, they refined this female version of the yellow-turbaned strongman to help take care of Guo. Guangpu did not conceal her aura. After she entered the room, Luo Chunyang instantly felt the change of her aura. He opened his eyes and looked at Guangpu. "Bao, your grandfather is here. Don't you have something to ask him? Hurry up." Seeing that Luo Chunyang had woken up, Guangpu said with a smile. Chapter 293. The joy of Luo Fan and the hope of inheritance. Hearing Guangpu's voice, Luo Chunyang was overjoyed and said, "Great, I have been waiting for this day for more than 10,000 years. Silly child, it is your fault. Your grandfather is so nice to you, why do you need to worry so much? You can ask him directly if you have any problems. Why do you have to wait here for so long? You even delayed the speed of cultivation." Guangpu said helplessly. Luo Chunyang shook his head and said, "Grandpa is too busy. There seems to be a major change in the world. How can I bother Grandpa for my little problem? If it delays the important thing, I can't redeem myself even if I die 10,000 times." As he said, he stood up and began to move his limbs, trying hard to move his body. Obviously, Guangpu had said these words to Luo Chunyang many times. At this time, it was just to fit the situation, but there was no need to continue to be entangled in this. He just shook his head and said, holding Guo in his arms. His body shook, and he turned into a long rainbow and rushed into the sky. Over the years, Luo Chunyang had accumulated countless questions. Naturally, he was more eager to see Luo Fan than Guangpu. His body shook, but he did not turn into a long rainbow. Instead, he turned into a conveyance light and followed behind Guangpu, rushing into the sky quickly. At this time, the world in the space-time illusion had stopped changing. This heaven and earth that had undergone a heaven-shaking transformation seemed so real to Luo Chunyang and Guangpu, as if it was the real desolate heaven and earth. Compared to 10,000 years ago, the current Guangpu was only more proficient in all kinds of divine art. He learned some of the techniques that he couldn't learn due to his insufficient cultivation base, and refined the mana in his body to become more agile. However, in the most important aspect of cultivation base, there wasn't much change. Even so, what she cultivated was the great way of the Tao fruit that Luo Fan had only passed on to his disciples. After she had completely stabilized her cultivation realm, her strength was at least several times stronger than that of the ordinary innate gods who cultivated other kinds of cultivation fruit. In other words, at this moment, Guangpu could be said to be the most powerful innate god in the entire space-time illusion. At this moment, even she couldn't sense that this world was fake at all, and this was sufficient to prove how real this world was. Luo Fan had already given Guangpu permission to enter and exit the space-time illusion. Therefore, although Guangpu couldn't see the true appearance of this formation, He was able to choose the correct path without any hesitation. After winding through the void for more than 1,000 miles, he rushed out from a mysterious place and easily rushed out of the space-time illusion. At the moment when they rushed out of the space-time illusion, she and Luo Chunyang almost saw Luo Fan standing above the space-time illusion in the void and looking down at the huge formation below at the same time. When he was transforming the whole space-time illusion, Luo Fan's mind and thoughts were completely connected with the whole illusion. Naturally, he was aware of everything that happened in the illusion. When Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang planned to fly towards him, he knew what they were thinking. At this moment, seeing them rushing out of the space-time illusion, he was naturally not surprised. He raised his hand and waved, and countless innate pneuma quickly gathered under his feet. In the blink of an eye, it had already gathered into a 1-acre magic cloud under his feet. This magic cloud was extremely solid, like a solid ground, and looked extremely stable. When Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang landed on the magic cloud, they didn't say much and immediately knelt down to pay their respects to Luo Fan. They were very respectful. When they finished the necessary etiquette, Luo Fan sent out an invisible force to help them up. He said, "Bauer, if you have any problems in the future, you don't need to wait to send a message to me. Although it's important, if you can't take care of your family because of it, what's the use of being busy? Chunyang knows I won't do this next time." Luo Chunyang's eyes turned red when he heard that. "Well, Puer, take Wer here. I haven't seen her for a long time." Luo Fan nodded and turned to Guang Pu. Of course, Guang Pu wouldn't object to Luo Fan holding her grandson. She had brought Wer here for this. Hearing Luo Fan's words, she quickly handed Luogua to Luo Fan. Luo Fan took Wer and teased her a little. Luogua giggled and looked very cute. Although it had been more than 10,000 years since Luo Fan last saw Luogua, 2,000 years in the medium-class world was equivalent to 10,000 years in the space-time illusion. Luogua looked like an ordinary baby. But Luogua looked like an ordinary baby who had gone through 1 month. Basically, she didn't grow much. She didn't look much different from 10,000 years ago. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Luogua called out in a childish voice. Hearing this, Luo Fan smiled from ear to ear. Originally, when he was on the earth in the future, Luo Fan didn't like children so much. He even hated them. However, when he came to the primordial world, which seemed to be extremely rich but was actually extremely barren, he realized that his love for babies had reached an unimaginable level after a long period of loneliness. Every time he saw this ignorant baby, who was growing every moment, he felt his heart grow calm, as if he saw a glimmer of hope. It was for this reason that he recognized Luo Fu as his son and tried his best to send Wer back to Guang Pu. Instead of turning her into a magic weapon, "You two, come with me. You haven't been back to the search cave for a long time." Luo Fan had something to do, but he didn't lack time. After teasing Luogua, he said to Guang Pu and Luogua, "Yes." Guang Pu and Luogua hurriedly bowed. Luo Fan nodded. With a thought, the magic cloud under their feet floated up very slowly. It seemed like it would take decades to reach the top of the mountain. However, in the span of 100 breaths, the magic cloud had already flown nearly 50,000 kilometers and reached the height of the search cave. Luo Fu was fine. His cultivation level was low. He only felt that this method was quite magical, but he wasn't too shocked. But Guang Pu was different. She had already attained the Earth Immortal Dao fruit and had a very high cultivation level. What she saw and sensed was 1,000 times more than what Luo Fu could see. The seemingly simple and natural flying method just now was broken down into countless mysteries of the great Dao in her eyes. Moreover, these mysteries of the great Tao were of the same origin as the cultivation method she cultivated, but they were 1,000 times more brilliant. They looked like guiding lights that guided her in the right direction. It was more like a conclusion, a confirmation of the fruits of her cultivation in this lifetime. It could be said that the benefits of this flight to Guangpu was already comparable to all of her gains from cultivating the spacetime illusion for 10,000 years. When they stepped into the search cave, Guangpu's expression was still rather dazed. Her mind was still filled with the countless mysteries of the Great Tao, and she seemed to be rather dazed. Luo Fan was naturally aware of Guangpu's state. He ignored her and directly brought Luo Chunyang into the cave abode to sit down. Only then did he ask, "Bauer, ask away if you have any questions." "Yes." Luo Chunyang was originally worried about his mother's sudden change. When he heard Luo Fan's words, he knew that his mother was definitely fine. He hurriedly shifted his thoughts to the conversation with Luo Fan. Luo Chunyang had encountered countless problems over the years. However, there was one that was the greatest. It was the Khanate door. Why have you been so cautious and conscientious in your cultivation all these years? Why haven't you slacked off for even a moment, but why hasn't the Khanate door moved at all? No matter how hard I try, there's no change at all, let alone breaking it open? Luo Chunyang asked immediately. I already know about this. It's only natural that the Khanate door is sturdy. As long as you work hard in your cultivation, you'll naturally be able to break it open when the time comes. It's not that your cultivation is useless, that you can't feel any changes right now. It's just that your time hasn't come yet, Luo Fan said plainly. This. Luo Chunyang was obviously not satisfied with Luo Fan's answer. That was for sure. Fine, I'll count on you a little. I have a scripture here. When you're able to comprehend the mysteries of this scripture, it'll be your time. You can try to abandon everything and break open the Khanate door, Luo Fan said with a smile. Thank you, grandfather. Luo Chunyang was overjoyed. Luo Fan smiled faintly and said a long string of strange syllables. These syllables were extremely mysterious and seemed extremely complicated. At the same time, they seemed extremely simple. In its complexity, it was as if millions of people were speaking at the same time, but in its simplicity, it was as if they were breathing in and out. It was mysterious and wonderful. These syllables were very short. They were only equivalent to a few thousand words. However, Luo Chunyang had to listen to them more than 100 times before he finally memorized every syllable. However, he could only memorize it. It was impossible for him to recite it or recite the scripture again. Luo Fan was very patient. If Luo Chunyang showed any signs of not remembering it, he would immediately repeat it again. He repeated it more than 100 times until Luo Chunyang was embarrassed and said that he had memorized it completely. Chunyang is stupid, I've lost face for grandpa. Luo Chunyang apologized to Luo Fan in shame. You're not stupid. Do you know what the scripture I was reciting just now is? Luo Fan said with a smile. May I ask, grandfather? Luo Chunyang asked. This scripture contains the secrets of the Great Tao. It is my understanding of the Khanate Tao. It contains the profound innate secrets that I comprehended when I watched your father blast open the gate of innate many years ago. If one day you can recall the scripture as a martial art instead of a meaningless syllable, you will have comprehended the Khanate Tao. Luo Fan said with a smile. Thank you, grandfather. Luo Chunyang was overjoyed. His eyes were filled with determination. Obviously, Luo Fan's confidence had been aroused, and he had absolute confidence in his heart. Luo Fan nodded slightly. The scripture just now was not a language, nor was it a collection of words. It was the sound of the Great Tao. It was a syllable that was produced by merging the Khanate Tao that he had comprehended with the sound. Only by comprehending the Great Tao contained in it would he be able to return the syllable to its origin and restore it to the Khanate Tao. What kind of martial art Luo Chunyang could comprehend from it in the future depended entirely on Luo Chunyang. Even Luo Fan did not know at this time. Luo Chunyang felt relaxed and his mind became more agile after putting down his worries. Without hesitation, he asked the difficult questions he had encountered in the past years of cultivation. These questions were mostly about the 9 heaven sun transformation technique. It seemed to be basic, but it pointed to the root. When Luo Fan heard the questions asked by Luo Chunyang, joy surged in his mind. The fact that Luo Chunyang could ask these questions proved that Luo Chunyang had begun to comprehend the cultivation method he had passed to him. It proved that Luo Chunyang had really obtained his inheritance. This was even better than Luo Fu, who had opened the Khanate door. How could he not be happy? With this joy, Luo Fan's face was full of smiles. He answered Luo Chunyang's questions more wholeheartedly. The most profound and wonderful mystery of the Great Way in the untainted land was hidden in all kinds of things that seemed simple and ordinary. After knowing that Luo Chunyang had obtained his inheritance, Luo Fan had greater expectations for him. When answering Luo Chunyang's questions, he gradually included all kinds of mysteries of the Great Way of heaven and earth that he had comprehended, and the language he used became more difficult. At first, Luo Chunyang could understand. But later, he found that the more he asked, the more questions he encountered. In the end, he suddenly realized that the questions he asked were just the tip of the iceberg of the questions he did not understand. 3 days later, Luo Chunyang finally could not bear it. He knelt on the ground in shame and said, "Through your teachings, Chunyang knows that my cultivation is shallow. I am willing to go back and cultivate again. When I make progress in the future, I will ask you for help." Luo Fan smiled and said, "The one at the door of the space-time illusion is my doppelganger celestial device. Although it is not my real body, it also has a part of my thoughts. It is not much different from me. From now on, go to the doppelganger celestial device every year. I will use the doppelganger celestial device to check your progress." Hearing that, Luo Chunyang knew that this was a rare opportunity. He hurriedly knelt in joy and said, "Chunyang understands." The conversation between Luo Fan and Luo Chunyang lasted for 3 days. At this time, Guang Pu was already waiting at the side. She didn't stay in the Seeker's Cave for long. She only spent less than 2 hours before she regained her senses. She didn't comprehend any divine arts or techniques during that time, but it was like a guiding light that allowed her to know the direction of her cultivation. She was no longer confused about the way forward in the future. After waking up, she had been listening to the conversation between Luo Fan and Luo Chunyang in the cave abode. The conversation in the past 3 days was not only beneficial to Luo Chunyang, but also to Guang Pu. At the very least, it allowed her to truly understand the foundation of the great Tao that Luo Fan had passed down to her. It allowed her to understand many things that she had neglected before. These things would not directly improve her cultivation realm, but they opened up her train of thought, allowing her to better use her power. "Do you understand?" Luo Fan asked Guang Pu after instructing Luo Chunyang. Luo Fan's question struck Guang Pu's mind like lightning. In an instant, Guang Pu's mind went blank. "Do I understand?" Amidst the emptiness, this question slowly echoed in his mind. "What do I need to understand? Why does Master ask this? Could it be that there's something that I've never understood?" Guang Pu's eyes gradually became blank. Seeing the change in Guang Pu, Luo Fan sighed and said, "Since you still don't understand, then forget it. You'll understand one day in the future." His voice was mixed with an extremely penetrating thought. This thought jolted Guang Pu, who was still in a daze. Guang Pu returned to her senses and said in shame, "This disciple is ignorant. Go. You don't need to stay in the space-time illusion anymore. You can do whatever you want." Luo Fan waved his hand. As he waved his hand, an invisible force appeared out of thin air. It wrapped around the two of them and rushed out. In an instant, they arrived in front of the search cave. Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang knelt in front of the cave abode and kowtowed a few times before turning to leave. "Since Master said that there's something I don't understand, then it must be something important that I've overlooked," Guang Pu thought to himself as he flew with Luo Chunyang, feeling rather perturbed. "Mom, where are we going now?" Grandpa said that we don't need to go to the illusion to cultivate. Why don't we go to the moon? Luo Chunyang saw Guang Pu's anxiety and diverted her attention. Oh? You want to see the place where I used to cultivate? Guang Pu came back to her senses and forced a smile. Yes, Mom, you've stayed there for so long and you can control that place completely. As your son, I naturally want to see it, Luo Chunyang said. All right then. Let's go after leaving a message for your dad. Guang Pu's mood became better when she heard Luo Chunyang's words. She smiled. With that said, the two of them turned into streaks of light and descended. After half a day, they had entered the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain and arrived at the valley where they cultivated. The two of them left images in the valley with their divine sense. As soon as they sensed the arrival of Luo Fu, the images would be automatically activated and tell them where they were going. After that, Guang Pu took action and left a warning array outside the valley. Then, he brought Luo Chunyang and Gua out of the space-time illusory realm and rushed upwards. The defensive formation they had left outside the valley wasn't very powerful, and it wasn't very exquisite either. However, it showed that this valley already had an owner. The space-time illusion was vast and sparsely populated, and it was not an irreplaceable place for cultivation. With this array, no innate deity would come to occupy this place. Luo Chunyang and Gua couldn't bear the attack of the gang wind, thunder, and fire. So, they chose the area around Buzhou Mountain that was separated from the gang wind, thunder, and fire. Then, they entered the endless starry sky. Although Luo Chunyang had experienced the endless starry sky many times, it was the first time for him to enter this place. When he stepped into this place, his mind was greatly shaken, and he was instantly dumbfounded. His whole body was unable to move, and he stood there in a daze.